Hello, everybody. Welcome to the deepest dive on Alan Wake 2, the best, most thorough discussion about Alan Wake 2 on the internet. If you found deeper, send it to us. We'll give you your money back. This is MinnMax, everybody. My name is Ben Hansen, and I'm joined by a disgusted Sarah Potorsky.
Hello.
And a wincing Leo Vader.
Oh, yeah.
Dastardly Jeff Marchiafava.
That's me.
And radiant Haley McLean.
Hello.
Thank you all for being here. This is it. This is the grand finale. In this discussion, it's the third part of our Game Club series where we're unpacking the final third of Alan Wake 2 from Remedy. So we are going to be spoiling everything in this game, period, full stop. Technically, we're starting with both characters' chapter 7s, if you want to be technical, and then going through absolutely everything else in Alan Wake 2. Everything that we're saying, everything that we're doing is a result of Patreon supporters. People at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2Ns. They have been joining us for this ride. They've been submitting comments over there on Patreon that we're going to be reading throughout the show. So if you're wondering, what are these things? Who are these people that they keep citing? Where's that coming from? It's coming from a post on patreon.com/MinnMax with 2Ns, because those people have enjoyed the wild ride we've taken them on, and Remedy's taken them on more specifically, I guess. And then they have chosen to support the Game Club format, the deepest dive format, by going to patreon.com, submitting comments, but then also unlocking the podcast version of the deepest dives. If you unlock that bonus podcast feed at the $5 tier on Patreon, you get all of the deepest dives. I think this is number 27 or 28. So all those are in that feed. You get early access to the MinnMax Show podcast, one day early, also ad-free every single week. All of our interviews are in there, max spoilers, bonus commentary tracks. There is a secret bonus podcast only available on Patreon that Dan Reichert from Giant Bomb and Leo Vader recorded. That's going to be...
I was wondering if that went up. That's got some hot takes. I was looking for the Patreon post about it, and I was like, oh, maybe the takes are too hot.
Yeah, we're saving it for the $100 tier. No, it's for everybody, the $5 tier. It's going to be going up on Monday, November 27th. So if you want to unlock that bonus secret podcast from Dan Reichert and Leo, that's also in that bonus podcast feed. And if you've enjoyed this whole deepest dive journey, it's a nice way to say thanks for all of us spending way too much time talking about this lovely, lovely game. Alan Wake 2. We did it! This is it! This is it, everybody! We're doing it right now! We received hundreds of comments over there on Patreon about the final third of Alan Wake 2, but we'd like to play a game called Most Common Comment. Try and guess, everybody, what people talked about the most in the final third of Alan Wake 2. Haley, yes?
The last line of the game.
Ooh.
That was my answer too. Absolutely.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Leo, what do you think?
I'm going to say being inside the end of Return, Scratch's ending, the idyllic Deerfest scene.
Deerfest scene. Okay, Sarah, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Saga getting a record Dark Place escape. Speedrunning, leaving Dark Place.
Okay, I don't think anybody got it. It was generally talking about the ending and people being disappointed by the ending. It's not that was the overwhelming thing, but a majority of people, when writing it about the ending, were maybe not the hottest on it, but there are people that are hot on it, so it's a full spectrum. But I think that would be the number one slot for what people are writing it about. Yes, Miss Pazorski?
I have this theory.
Oh, yeah.
That I have this theory that all of these games are just secretly a scam, and then they write the actual ending into 5 of their other games to make you buy them so you can understand the game that you already purchased.
That's an interesting idea. So it's a little bit of the Marvel effect of we're going to string you along a little bit.
They're like, oh, but like you already paid like $60 to play this game. So like if you want to know the ending, we've got some DLC that'll kind of answer some of your questions, but that'll be an extra $20. And then if you want to know the actual ending, we got another game coming out in 13 years that you can play.
And so
maybe that's why this was only a $50 game, is because the last $10 or $20 worth of game is gone.
So the idea is just generally an overall heartfelt game where you really feel like you can feel the hands of the creators. You're feeling the hands, but the hands are guiding you towards, give us more money. That's the vibe you're feeling? I get it. You're not alone. Ryan, over there on Patreon, they say, I was hoping that the game would provide more resolution than what it ended up providing. I feel like with the cliffhanger ending and unanswered plot points, Remedy is setting up for DLC and other games in the Remedy connected universe. But personally, I'd rather have a more self-contained narrative, even if that means a more limited narrative. I just don't have the time or money to follow an ongoing game story to get the quote-unquote full story, says Ryan. So I'd imagine you're in the same camp as them. But I was really tickled by, we did a stream on Wednesday, and it's up on our YouTube channel Wednesday evening, or we did the stream on Tuesday anyways. The point is, we were doing like a bunch of jokes talking about what we're thankful for in gaming this year and stuff from the MinnMax studio. Meanwhile, Haley was streaming the end of Alan Wake 2. And then I jumped in the chat after we raided Haley's channel and saw that Sarah was in there. Sarah, did you watch Haley play all of Alan Wake 2?
I watched, I want to say like 80% of it. I also literally,
so
when I found out that she wasn't streaming the end, Ben, because you were going to be on the MinnMax channel.
Yeah.
I rushed in to rectify the situation. I was like, Haley, you can't do this. Like, I need to watch it. Like, my life will be incomplete if I don't see it.
Haley, was it weird to stream the whole game? Do you feel like that colored your experience?
No, I don't think so. I think it definitely probably made it more fun because it's like fun to be around. Like it makes it less scary, especially too. Like
sure.
The Cynthia portion, like it's much more fun to be scared and then see like 10 people go ha ha ha, and I'm like ha ha yeah. Like it's not just me alone. Like God damn it! Like I'm so scared. I hate this. But it definitely made it more fun. And what my favorite part was when I finished the game and then the chat and I were just like, what does that mean? And it was just like I got to just read a flush of comments. It was almost like a pre-deepest dive. I had to just read a flush of comments of like people like, oh, but what about this? Did they think about this? And I was like, oh my God, like it's just fun. It's a game that very much lends to, what do you think? Like that's why it's such a good deepest dive, is because there's no one answer, right? It's like, I feel like X, and then you just expound from there.
Yeah. Right. I mean, in general, what'd you think about the final third of the game, Haley?
I loved it so much. I am so pro the ending. I'm such a nerd for the ending. But I'm very I'm excited to hear why some people might not like it, because totally get it. But for me personally, I was like, oh, yes, perfect ending. Love it. Excited for more. Like, it was great.
Yeah, I feel like you talked about it a little bit in like the previous episodes, but that level of, it hit that level you were expecting of, it's going to clear up some things throughout the course of this game, but then at the same time, there's going to be a lot of questions left for the future. Because I mean, I think that's
Alan Wake.
That's Alan Wake, baby. Yeah, I feel like this entire section had like a great sense of momentum to it. And especially in the early chapters here, where it just felt like, all right, what questions do you have about the cult? Okay, here we go. You want to know why Nightingale got up? It's because they weren't able to complete their ceremony action. It's like, what other questions? Okay, let's do that. And then it kind of slowed down on the answering questions in that last chunk to be like, and there, and the soft fade out.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me, because I felt like for a lot of it, I didn't have a lot of questions, and it was bothering me, like what was off about it. And I feel like the thing that bothered me for a lot of the game was that it was a mystery game that didn't have a lot of mysteries, because as soon as they introduced some kind of mystery, they immediately told you what to think about it. And because they were so focused on misdirecting you from what the real thing was. So I didn't go through the entire game thinking like, oh, what's this mysterious cult and what are they doing? Because in like the first 5 minutes, they were like, yeah, there's this crazy evil cult out in the forest, and don't go out there because they're murdering civilians and doing these crazy rituals. So I just thought like, yeah, they're bad guys. I shoot them when I see them. And then 15 hours later, it's like, oh, actually, they were kind of good. And that is an interesting revelation, but it wasn't answering a question that I had. Because I had all of these false answers throughout the game for a lot of what was going on.
I don't know. I mean, when you're literally putting it up on the board saying, what is the cult? What is the cult's goal? I feel like they're driving those questions in more than it's Saga saying, well, I think the cult is this.
And their weird behavior, I guess. Like you think you have the answer for it and you don't. The cutting people open.
Right.
For example.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt that way a little bit, I guess, Jeff, on that note of like they're telling you what to think in this mystery with the Alan Wake scratch thing, which we talked about so much in the last episode of the Deepest Dive. Like, okay, who is he exactly? Because they really drive home in a big way at the start of this section. Like, no, that was 100% Scratch the whole time. We were duped. That was super duper Scratch. Only so then they can fully flip it and be like, what? Wake was Scratch? The Dark Presence was in him? So it's like, okay, we were kind of on the right track a little bit last time, I think.
Yeah, and the, you know, and Logan drowning, which they told you the first sentence out of Sarah's, or was it Sarah? What was Rose's mouth in the diner. It's like they weren't like setting up a mystery. It was just like, no, you lived here and your daughter died. And to the point where like then you got to Saga's camper and she saw that news article and it was like big news to her somehow. She was like, oh my God, my daughter drowned. And it was like, wait, they told us that. They told us that so much earlier. Like, why do you seem surprised by this? It was just a weird pacing of how they kind of set up these misdirections. Yeah. And I think we all said it at different points of like, but well, it can't be this thing that they're telling us that it is, because that would be too straightforward. I felt like there was something missing there of just, and like one of the contrasting examples was like Mr. Door, where it was just like, what is the deal with Mr. Door and what is he? And that wasn't one that they like, no one just sat down and said, oh, he traverses through worlds because he has magical powers and also he's Saga's father. You know, like there was more mystery there, and I found myself thinking more about that when I wasn't playing than some of these other things that I had false impressions of. Because they told me false things about it.
You're giving the positive impression that if this game had a physical version, you would open up the game case and take a dump in it and then close it back up. But overall, I mean, what'd you think about the final third of Alan Wake 2?
I enjoyed it, and I did.
Okay. You sound so angry about it.
As I was playing this chunk, there was a lot of interesting stuff where it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it's just that it wasn't answering questions. It was kind of reversing things that I thought I already knew about. Right. But I enjoyed all of those twists and things when you got into like who shot Alan Wake, which again wasn't a question. Like we thought we knew what happened in that scene, and then you learn what actually happened. Like those were interesting revelations. And I largely enjoyed the game overall.
I think that's totally fair as like a detective story and reading it that way, as you can and should. But I think it's also interesting how record-settingly unreliable all of our narration has been this entire game. From both, not just Alan Wake, but from Saga. Something I wrote down at the very start of this section that was so funny to me, because they, you can't just tell the player that, but you really have to get them to like start thinking about it through that lens. And the first Alan cutscene of this section, he asks Door, so the masks are coming off? Door says, I wouldn't go that far. And then Alan's narration after the cutscene is, the masks were coming off.
Yeah, I like that too, Leo. It's like we can't trust them because just like us, they don't know what's going on. Right. Like I think last section, Leo, you were like, well, Saga at the very end says that was Scratch, so therefore that was Scratch. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. I was told it was Scratch. She's in the world that the game's happening, so I believe her. And then like 2 episodes later, she's like, I was wrong. And I was like, I don't trust you anymore to make assumptions. Like now I have to just rely on my own gut, not what the characters say. Like that's pretty fun.
Yeah, 100%. And it does go back to like readjusting your mind into the same. It was the same thing with the deduction board where it's like, wait, I'm not doing the deduction here. It's just the trappings of that. But you are very much telling us the story that you want to tell. And it does seem like you're seeing everything through the lens of the characters, and the characters are the ones that are giving those answers, as opposed to like just putting us in that situation for us to come up with the answers ourselves. So it isn't. I think like a big part of the game for me was just readjusting my initial impression that I was playing a mystery game. I would be doing any kind of deductions myself. And it's really just it's more focused on narrative and those characters and the journey that they go through, which is totally a valid thing.
Yeah, it's just like the whole mind place and the board and the profiling and stuff. It's all just like a format for telling you, moving the narrative along outside of it. And then, of course, later in the section, having narrative things get expounded upon within that framework. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I don't know. It shouldn't take too much explaining. It should speak on its own. I don't think that's a unfair criticism for how that stuff's handled, because it's like, it seems like you are going to be solving stuff, and then it becomes more clear like, oh, this is kind of just the replacement for the mission log.
Well, Joe thinks you're all wrong, and they have reason to know it for sure. They say, I'm a detective in England.
Wow. What?
And I'm really struck by how people have talked about how the game doesn't make you feel like a detective versus how good a representation of the job the game is. Profiling is a great example of preparing for a suspect or witness interview by considering the facts that you know against the personal bias of whomever you are speaking to. The Mind Palace is a variation on timelining, often used to sort out the facts of an investigation and work out what info or evidence is missing. Even the weirdness of standing around in a murder scene and making puns to break the tension capture the job well.
Wow.
Oh, wow. I love that insight. Because, like, yeah, is that just corny and we watch too much TV and they do that? Or do they do that to feel human in a moment where, like, this would be very scary if we weren't, like, together and talking and know each other kind of thing? Like, just a corpse on a table.
Yeah. Leo, did we hit it? I mean, did you have big thoughts on the last chunk of the game here? How it stuck the landing?
Oh, I love the whole chunk. The ending right before the credits, I didn't quite love, but, like, it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. And I like the unanswered questions for sure. I was, I'm on the record last episode said I hope they don't answer the questions. So I'm sorry, everyone.
I wonder, like, what's it like being in that mind space of just like not needing answers and just being like, I love the way that they just didn't answer anything. Like, how do you live your life, Leo? How do you go about your day?
Blissfully. It's about the journey. I've got so much left to think about,
I absolutely love the journey. But I wish I would have been left with more to, like, think about, like, outside of the game. Outside of, like, I wonder what happened. Is Saga still in the dark place? Like, I guess it was selfish of me to wish that they left Alan dead in a game called Alan Wake. But
no, I was with you.
I was like, I hate this. And then, like, Alice died for, like, 20 minutes. So I wish they would have been more...
You want more
courageous with their killings, I guess.
It is weird looking back on it and realizing that, like, realistically, nothing happened in this game, right? Like, everything is where it was at the beginning of the game. Alan's still stuck there. If you assume that, like, Saga saved everyone, they're just kind of back where they were at the starting of the story. And it's like, and we're just starting. I mean, I guess it's a spiral, so it's not the same loop.
Not a loop whatsoever. It's still like. Yeah, Alan's trying to get out of the dark place.
It's like, and it's like Yako, I assume, is still dead. So now everyone's just worse. My husband's dead. Everyone's just worse off because once again, Alan continues to exist.
Except for
and
Saga,
if he had crawled out of that lake, and I had gotten to shoot him like I wanted to in episode 1, none of this would have happened. Okay, because like once I started introducing the timeline stuff. That was when I was kind of like, okay, you guys, like, chill a little bit. Because now it's the whole, like, when did their timelines cross over? What was the effect of those timelines crossing over? And all that kind of stuff, now that we know that it's not linear. And now you're just like, well, heck. So you're telling me I just played a bunch of, like, random chapters for nothing?
That might be a bit of an exaggeration to phrase it that way.
It was a great journey, but... I didn't like the destination.
I feel like what this game was about was learning more about the dark place so we can conquer it later. Like, that's like what, because the whole mystery of Alan Wake 1 is like, what the heck is happening? Like, I don't even, who's that? Why are they weird shadows? And then at least in Alan Wake 2, we're like, okay, I'm a bit more used to what's happening. Now it's about learning the rules of the dark place, which they were sprinkling throughout the entire journey. And like, the only way Alan can get out is if he knows those rules. So sorry, the dogs are fighting under me. They choose right when we record to have a battle. But and so when we learn like about the loop thing, it's like, okay, we focus so hard on the loop, and then the realization it's a spiral. It's like, okay, now we have a way to get out, up or down. Which way should we go? Mm-hmm. And now we're gonna move forward to 3 with ascension or descension. And it's like Alan trying to figure out how to go up the spiral, not down it like he's been going down. Like, I think that's like, oh, now it makes sense, and now we can battle it together.
That is true, but is it just me, or does Alan Wake just really suck at navigating the dark place? Because it seems like Saga and Alice are both super good at it, and Saga figured it out in like 5 minutes on her little deduction board.
I mean, it's. For pacing, obviously that is like the way it had to be, but I also think it ties into the way she works through some of her demons at the end of this. Like Ellen being a much more tortured soul than she is when she's traversing the dark place.
Yeah. That was definitely, I think, the most impactful chunk of the final third was that sequence with her in the dark place, and then just immediately be like, nope, just cutting off all the negative talks, kind of monologue.
Literally cognitive behavioral therapy.
That's exactly it.
She did that and then cut out immediately.
Compared to like the end of the game is literally Alan Wake still monologuing at the desk, and then gets a bullet in the head. Like it's really
part
just
where you get to watch like Alan like crawl around his writer's room and like crawl across the desk. That was my favorite part. I don't know why, but like watching him just like watching this pathetic man just like crawl around and cry. I don't know. It really did it for me.
On what
Like
level,
more
Sarah?
of that, please.
So you just want crying men begging for mercy? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I don't know. It really awoke something in me.
Oh, cool.
Of crying pathetic man crawling across this floor.
Congratulations.
Can't get out of the dark place.
Oh, can you imagine?
But I do feel like I was waiting for the game to say something like profound about like the nature of humans, society, some kind of like, and it was like, it's just a little mystery. It's just, is it a loop? Is it a spiral? And I was like, oh, dang it. But anyways, great journey.
There was kind
Good
of
mystery.
a nice artistic collaboration benefits us all energy at the end there. Like Alan needed a co-author. That's what he needed. He needed to let go and not be the sole author of this thing and like get help. Like the thing we laughed at the first thing is like, I don't need your help, maybe later. Like it's like, just ask for help and you probably would have got out 13 years ago, but he didn't. He just sat his computer, his typewriter. And then if you listen to like how he talks when he's rolling on the floor, it's always like, this is my story. Get out of my story. My story. I can fix this. Is mine. It's like, dude, ask for help. Like
I did think at one point that it was like a criticism of like the mental health crisis of men for a little bit, considering that both like Alice and Saga get in and get out really fast, and like the only two people who really seem to have issues are Alan and Tom Zane. But like
and Tim too.
Nothing proven, nothing, nothing really shown, but like you could interpret it that way, I guess, if it makes me feel better.
No, I think
and mentally healthy guys like Tor and Odin are like, we can just hop in and out whenever we please. Like,
alcoholics, but healthy outside of that, I guess, is the take for them.
Figure it out.
Emilio says, I really like the idea that the dark place is a place where different authors are clashing together to try and steer this fluid reality. Zane, Door, Wake, Alice, Breaker, possibly more are involved. They're all using their art to shape this reality, some of them to get out, some of them trying to find a way out for others, and some of them seem to be kind of in love with the power they get to shape reality in that space, and they don't really want to lose that. I think that's a fun way to look at the story for sure, is to focus on this swirling authorial world. I have a very dumb question, Haley. But I mean, you mentioned a little bit too, Leo, about like the conversation with Mr. Door, but like I still, after finishing this game, don't really have a great sense of like, Dark Place isn't real though. Like, is that the wrong take? Like, when the whole thing where he's like, oh, Alice killed herself. Oh my God. I was like, but you're in the dark place. Like, I don't understand. Like, I thought this is just fantasy dark world. So why are we taking some events in the dark place like they're actually happening in the real world versus just this is all a manifestation of weird swirling dark energy?
I think what's happening there is the purpose of Return is to blend those two things so that the dark place becomes reality influenced, and then reality is going to suck because like the dark place isn't so much a place as like a thing that can affect other things, maybe, is kind of the energy. So like it's a spiral, I guess, is what we learned. Like it's an ocean spiral. It's a huge, big, vast spiral. And if it touches reality, it warps it. Maybe that's a better way to think about it. So Alan is I guess we kind of learned that the dark presence is in Alan when he the dark presence and the dark place are two distinct things. I think it's one of those things that's just an ethereal thought that our human brains can't, like language can't communicate properly. Like we want to say the dark place, but it also might be a fourth dimension we can't even explain kind of energy. And we're just supposed to be like, that's the dark place. It's
beyond
scary.
that, which is known to man.
My understanding, and I could be off, is that there's like nothing, it doesn't invent anything. It moves things around that existed.
Okay, right. It has to pull from somewhere, and that's okay. So the idea,
because there's a side to two doors. The doors have two sides, Ben.
Doors
have two sides.
In 2 rooms at once.
And it's in 2 rooms at once, and I think that was basically summing up what the dark place is to reality.
Well,
I believe Wake's apartment was like the most straight up reality place in the dark place, and I think that was kind of explained by Alice having been to the dark place. having a bit more of a connection with him.
Okay.
And that being able to like be a place where they can meet in a stronger way.
Interesting. So left more of a remnant there. I think, yeah, I mean, it kind of ties into that conversation that Wake had with Dora as well, where he's looking around at the late night show set and he's like, wait, are you telling me this was all fake? This was all just to cater to me? And I had that moment of like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I thought the idea, like, that this is all just a surreal nightmare. So it's like being in your nightmare all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, this isn't real at all. This is all about me. It's like, well, yeah, that's the reason you're being tortured. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
That's why there's a guy that looks just like you who's scary. Like, that's happened. Like, of course it's about you.
Right. And it's not so much
that
like
might have been a case of it over-explaining things, because I think this game does do that. I think it kind of explains the same 8 things 10 times sometimes to its light detriment, but it's a lot for people to wrap their head around, including me, and I do appreciate getting like, you can't miss the conversation where something really important about to understand the game is told to you.
Sure. Jason Voinar writes in and they say, as esoteric as it can sometimes seem, I'm in love with just how damn sincere the game is in its message about the power of art and music. When Estevez unironically shouts out, "The power of rock and roll!" it brought a tear to my eye, says Jason. And maybe that's as profound as you can get with this, Sarah, if you're looking for that religious epiphany. It is the message of, we believe in your art!
Isn't that like the plot of like a Disney movie? Like,
yeah, but this one's sick and twisted.
And your own creativity. You are the author of your own story, kids.
Yeah, but there's like a dark layer to it that makes it cool and more effective now.
What if it was dark?
Yeah, I mean,
what if we got to stab Sam Lake 20 times and we called it art?
I mean, that was the best part of the game. It
looked like the entire vibe of it was like a college like thesis for like cinema. You know, was like the vibe I got from it, where it's like there's a lot of edgy. Yeah, there's a lot of edgy stuff happening here, but I don't know if there's a lot of deep meaning to it.
All right. Well, maybe you got too hyped up. Maybe doing the deepest dive, you started expecting some sort of haymaker at the end here or something.
An ending?
Maybe it's your fault, Sarah. Maybe you hyped yourself up too much.
I think that must be certainly what it is.
I don't think you understood coming into this that you weren't going to get a conclusion.
No, I didn't. I'm fine with an ambiguous ending. I think, and I enjoyed the final third of this game, but I definitely shared those feelings, Sarah, of like, I would like this a whole lot more if I knew that there wasn't a roadmap ahead. I don't like that feeling of like, okay, am I just going to get an answer and I get to hear Logan at the end of this call in DLC, or I get to find some connection in DLC? It's like that's a bummer. I don't like just that ambiguity of like, is this the story that they're telling us, which I'm totally fine with, or is it a matter of wait 6 months, you know?
Were we okay with cliffhangers in 2010? Like, do you think as a collective society we were more okay with cliffhangers then?
Maybe it's because we didn't know we would die a year later, and then COVID hit, and suddenly I'd like answers faster.
Because now we have like the way to consume media is binging. And so like when this game came out in 2010, that wasn't how media was given to us, but now it's different. So maybe they're still sticking to that, like, no, you need to take a break, like, see you in a bit. But we're so spoiled with like episode 2 autoplay, like right now. Like, do you think it would have hit different if this came out, like, obviously it wouldn't look the same, but like 3 years after the first game and they did the exact same ending?
Maybe. But then again, it seems like, you know, the larger TV world is kind of shifting back towards pacing things out and getting away from the Netflix dump of everything at once, binge, you know? So maybe society is shifting back towards it's okay to leave people wanting a little bit.
This, though, it's like, I would be really surprised if the DLC, it starts with Logan going, "Hi, Mom."
Really?
It's going to answer no questions.
It's
going to cover like Estevez in a house like 50 miles away, and like nothing will be answered. Maybe they'll make a reference and everyone will write spirals and loops in their journals and like that kind of stuff.
Someone said yesterday it might be Tim. Like, Tim would be a cool person to have DLC.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Stuck in the dark place.
But I also I don't know if it will even be answered in Alan Wake 3, and maybe that's me being really naive, but it's like, it doesn't feel like a cliffhanger to me. It feels like this game gave you all of these components of this equation, blank plus blank plus blank plus blank, all these rules equals question mark, and now it's like, what do you make of this equation? Was that the right ending? And that's what I think were meant to be thinking about. And for them to give a concrete answer to that would maybe cheapen it. And I don't know, maybe I'm putting myself in Sam Lake's shoes too much.
Well, Ampex wrote in and they said, now that we know that the Lake House is an FBC outpost and that the upcoming DLCs for the game are called Night Springs and the Lake House, it makes me excited thinking that the Lake House might be a crossover setup DLC for Control 2, just like AWE was for Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
I think that seems likely.
Yeah.
Especially with, I mean, at a certain point when Estevez is like, all right, Saga, consider yourself deputized to the FBC. Here we go. It feels like that'd be a really easy kind of daisy chain to knock it back to Control's world here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Should we start a little bit at the beginning of where we left off? Let's see. Yeah. Snake wrote in over on Patreon and they say it's not a loop. Interesting. I'm curious where you're going with that wild theory. Sarah, how'd you do at the police station talking to Ilmo, where he was talking about his dear brother? Was it a rough go for you?
It was rough. I was validated, though. I knew that if Ilmo and Yako were in the cult, it was a good cult. I knew it.
Right. Yeah.
I knew it. I was like, Ilmo and Yako, not bad people.
Yeah, I do like that idea of like, we just needed to keep people out of the woods because the Taken were coming out of that lake. And so if we just come up with this cult, everyone will be too scared to go near it in this universe, as long as you spread the word and make sure that fear is a great motivator, as they put it. I think that's a really, and there's obviously a couple beats of it in this section of the game, but like to have the funniest characters in the game with those two also be some of the most heartfelt, like when he is just talking about his brother saying like, oh, he had a good heart, as he's standing over the corpse of him and stuff. Like that's...
I like when he said like, what cult... Yeah, when he was like, what cult would call themselves a cult? And I was like, that's what I've been saying.
Right.
He's like, not a very good cult.
Totally. And that's like a testament to two great characters that they can be introduced as complete jokes.
Yep.
And then gradually get more depth through like, not just this, but the profiling and stuff to become really
I found that I
well-rounded.
liked... And I felt connected to all the characters, even if they were only shown to like me for a little bit, like Tor and Odin. I also like just connect right off the bat. I was like, I like these guys. I like their energy. I like what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah,
really distinct performances, like really fleshed out, unique takes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Smyrny 9000, just to stay on the Jaco train. They say one of the saddest parts of the game was visiting the diner during Deerfest to find the local Koskela Brothers TV ad. Ilmo does his usual spiel, this time selling Alan's book for the Koskela's book club. But when he throws the line to Jaco, it cuts to an empty frame and you remember that his brother was killed. And it was heartbreaking. And then
There's
James...
even like a little outline that's like he's missing. It's like really faint, but it's like a little... I was like, oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, James Altman wrote in about that too. I missed that outline apparently, but they say that was such a gut punch. It managed to straddle the line between still being funny with the review not talking about the content of the writing, but rather just the physical features of the book, to sad with Jaco being dead, while giving a hint of creepiness with that weird shadow outline.
I thought that was so funny because like Alan's there to find the book and see what's in it, and it's like, oh, a commercial about the book. This is perfect. And they're like, the book weighs 2 pounds. It's made of paper.
It has the best description on the back that I've ever read of a book.
He won't read it, and you're like, what's the book about? And he's like probably panicking in the moment.
Ampex writes in and they say, it really felt like an Avengers level crossover moment when you were standing in the police station about to trigger the point of no return. In this room, we have alternate universe Max Payne, an FBC agent, and the granddaughter of Tor from the Old Gods of Asgard, and they're making up a plan on how to rescue Alan Wake, who is currently hanging out with alternate universe Jack Joyce in the Dark Place. That's it. That's it. Kind of all funnels together.
That's what they did.
Yeah, I definitely had that like little bit of the oh my god crossover just within the world of this game. Towards the end, like kind of the last cutscene, like seeing everybody in live action together. Something about the scene like Saga live action with Alan Wake and Sam Lake. It's like, oh, that just seems so cool. There's something more physical that you can just feel about like, oh, these people are all in the same room together in a different kind of way that feels like it has more weight than just seeing the in-game models, you know? Yeah. Let's see. Boondock Bandit says, when Saga learned that the summoning ritual called for a piece of art, My mind went to Saga calling Rose to use her Alan Wake drawings and fan fiction to bring him from the dark place. Yeah, the old gods reunion was fun, but how adorable would it be for Rose to read her fan fiction romance to Alan Wake as he walks out of the water, Casino Royale style?
Throwing his hair back. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew it was too good to be true, but it felt like the game was really teeing up something with the lunchboxes, her diary, the Alan Wake shrine. Side note, this was a blast, and I would never have gotten to enjoy this game if it weren't for the deepest dive. Thank you, Boondock Bandit.
Oh,
Nice.
fun.
Yeah, that's very sweet. So they need to have some piece of art, because it turns out if you believe in the art and then you flip that switch, you don't really necessarily need Alan Wake after all. And so then we get the best darn rock band in the world to go play their greatest gig ever on the side of a lake.
It reminded me a lot of, like, if you've been to Disney World, they do that Phantasmic show at night on the water, where they like shoot up the water flares and they put images on it, and like Mickey comes to fight a dragon and there's like fire, fire, and like epic music in the background. I was like, is this literally going to be Alan Wake 2 Phantasmic? Like, and it was.
Yeah, it's interesting having, I didn't expect at this moment in the story to have that pop-up, the classic video game pop-up of like, hey, everybody, you're in the end game now. Like, if you want to mop stuff up, you have to do it now. I'm like, wait, we just started the final chunk. Like, what is the structure going to be from here on out?
It got a little like scary dicey with the saves in the last half too. I was like, there weren't like save rooms anymore.
Right.
And I was like, is the game saving? Are we saving? Like, am I just going? Is it just go time?
But then I think that's such a weird thing about the final third of this game is like, as a game, it really does. I mean, let's see. Somebody put it better than I could. Ravgo says, looking back, it feels that from a pure video game perspective, the summoning ritual was the climax of the game. Everything that followed was all about storytelling, with just a few minor combat encounters thrown in between. I can see how some might find that change of pace a bit anticlimactic, but I liked it. As for me, the game is about a story anyway, and it really became the total focus in the last few chapters. It's the game of the year for me, says Ravgo. Yeah, that is a weird thing. It's like at a certain point you realize like, oh, the final boss was, I guess, that song by the lake.
Yeah.
For me, the final boss was the Saga Mine Place, because
yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I was dragging my corpse across the finish line there.
I got killed a few times there, which was, it was a bummer because that rock climax hit so hard. I had an absolute blast with that.
I feel like that should have been at the end. But like,
Yeah.
I guess it's fine where it is. It was just such a cool moment. And then they were like, all right, back to the daily grind.
Right. I don't mind having an epilogue, like more story stuff after that, but it's like that rock moment reminded me like why narrative games have combat. It's like in service of a moment that's bigger than just the combat mechanics. It's like you were so in on what was happening and the characters that were involved in it happening and genuinely feeling like you're fighting for your life. And the way it ends with feeling like you're really overwhelmed. I think this probably happened to everybody. Feeling like you're super overwhelmed. There's way too many guys. I've been doing my best, but there's so many. And then they finish with the big chord that blasts everybody away.
Yeah.
Like I had chills. That was an awesome moment. And then the like having enemies. You can have a couple enemies after, but like, why was I dying? What did that add?
It really felt like they turned up the enemies in the last half of the entire thing. Because like I would just be, you know, they took away like Alan's map when he walks out of the lake, right? And now I don't know where I am in that forest because I literally had to open the map every 5 minutes, and then suddenly it's just like enemy, and I'm like, we're done with this. We're done.
Right,
like
right.
let me. Like the enemy is me trying to leave this forest without a map. Like that's hard enough.
Yeah,
it didn't add much.
Steven N is with you saying the beachfront concert encounter is where I reached my combat breaking point and I started switching between story mode and normal difficulties. This and a few later encounters felt unfairly punishing as there's only so much dodging and space I can create to reload and heal before getting swarmed. Is this something with all survivor horror games, or should I hope for improvements in later installments of the Remedy interactive universe? Yeah,
I mean, it's better than Control. They learned a bit from Control, but still sometimes it's like, where do I go? This is annoying.
Right.
Yeah.
And in terms of the combat, yeah. And I think just like the last third of the game is just so interesting in terms of like just inventory wise. Like, okay, we're playing as this different Alan Wake and you're going to get a bunch of guns, but then you can't go pick up the guns that were set aside for Saga that were dropped by the FBC. It's just, everything just feels systemically a little anticlimactic, I guess is the best way I can put it for kind of the final third of the game. But I don't mind it because it all just kind of peters into we're just telling the story here, guys. But if I was like trying to 100% this thing and trying to treat it like my 15th run of Resident Evil 4, I could see a little bit of structurally it's wonky, you know? But it's worth it for the wonk. The wonk is the charm. Let's see. Jonathan Valdez writes in and says, I just want to know why I couldn't ride in the bus with Tor and Odin on the way to the lake. That's a good question.
Would have made it easier.
Yeah, they say by far it's my game of the year, though.
I love that you would like see the doors. You see the doors fly off, and then like you see the door, and I was like, how did they make it without crashing? Like, that is insane.
All the mowing down the foliage that you follow their path of destruction, they would have had to animate that as the answer if you were in that.
I guess so.
I think that's a clever way this game saved resources, is moments like that where things happen when you're not looking, and it doesn't take away anything. It still happened.
And I did like the feeling of like, I'm back in this damn haunted forest. It's super creepy, but like just follow that bus. Wherever that bus is going, I'm chasing after it all the way down this hill to safety.
Yeah, and I do like them just screaming. You can hear them say like, all right, put the pedal to the metal, brother. Another one says, yeah, how about we put the metal to the pedal? Another one's like, yeah, metal to the pedal. As they're going to, they just like rock and roll, and that's just pleasant.
That was a great build up to that sequence.
Yeah. And also it's just fun to have the FBC be like, hey, we got your back. Like, we brought so much equipment to battle the shadows that we've got you. Also,
I love that they also remind you that the FBC is a part of the government, considering that every box only had like one thing of bullets in it for the most part, and the fact that like the Alan Wake trap didn't even work for the second time.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, good. Like, we're keeping in line that this is a government agency.
Right. We're not flawless. Right. I mean, it definitely comes through to, where is this lovely comment where they're talking about the FBC and they say, Aaron T., anyone else laugh when you're talking to Agent Estevez as Alan after Scratch escapes the containment cell and she says, I got you every kind of weapon available, but it's just the 3 lame guns Alan already had in the dark place? Yeah. I know resources are tight, but this is all the FBC could come up with?
Budgets have been tight. We saw the FBC, everyone's missing in the FBC. Like, they're trying their best.
Yeah.
I wonder if you were supposed to get some crazy weapon there that got cut or something. Because that
missile
was
launcher.
Really weird.
Yeah. It does. Rifle? It does feel like the Resident Evil mission, rocket launcher moment or something. But I still like the idea of like hearing the helicopters coming overhead and just feeling like, all right, I've got some theoretical backup, and ultimately that results just in Casey, I guess, tossing you a bunch of ammo in that fight and whatnot. But I guess
I really liked Alex Casey in this half. This was really like his half for me. Like, I like him more as a character now.
Yeah.
And Sam Lake too at the same time, or just Alex Casey?
No, just Alex Casey. I want to be Alex Casey's second ex-wife.
Oh,
would be my goal.
Yeah.
to be in the avant-garde indie film.
Yeah. Now that Yako's dead, I have to move on.
Did anyone else? Did I have completely the wrong read? But for a while, Estevez was talking about her ex-wife and how like the pressure of the job kind of tore him apart, and all that stuff. And then Alex Casey chimes in and he goes, "You're better off without her. I know I am." And I had a moment of like, wait, did they have the same wife? Is that some weird connection between those two? But
can you imagine?
No, they bonded over their ex-wives.
I guess so. This is why I can't read social cues. Is then I later realized, no, they're just bonding on a bigger conceptual level. It's not a literal thing.
He'd never met her, and he's doing great. That's all he meant.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I also really love when they do that. It's like, oh my God, she's queer, yay! Like I just didn't think about it. It's like my wife. I was like, oh, yay, SMS. And
they did it. Let's see. So when Saga is driving to the beach and she tries calling her husband again, Mighty Ethan writes in on that note. They say, cliffhanger ending aside, do y'all think that Logan is really dead in the outside world when Saga talks to David? So we're not even talking about the cliffhanger at the end, but just in this chunk, right, where she calls up David and he's like, what are you talking about? Our marriage is ruined. Logan's dead. They say Estevez says that AWEs are usually pretty localized. That lines up with what we've seen so far from Control. So would this incident be able to affect Logan? Or is it just that Saga, more specifically Saga's phone, is inside the AWE and can therefore be affected by it? Is Saga even really talking to David from back home? Or is she just talking to a phantom inside the story David through her inside the story phone? And actually David and Logan are back home unaffected and fine.
object getting a little altered. I love that read. I took it. I only saw the, trying to capture Mr. Scratch and him blowing out of the cage at the end, and Estevez saying that's never happened before. That to me was like, okay, this is the most. We're focusing on Alan Wake because what happened to him is the most impactful AWE that's happened.
Well, to be fair, she does say, I haven't seen a situation this effed up. This is Estevez. She says, I haven't seen a situation this effed up since Eagle River. In terms of
that.
Is that anything in? Is that referenced somewhere?
It didn't even seem like that crazy of an AWE event. It was like a train that killed like 62 people or something, and it was just like a local para-criminal group, they call them. I guess they're para-utilitarians who just are criminals, so they call them para-criminals. They like used a train and killed 62 people. I'm like, that's the same as the whole world's reality going away. Like, no.
Maybe it was like a time travel train or something cool from Back to the Future 3 that we couldn't possibly imagine.
So I think that train is in the Control AWE DLC.
Yeah.
We saw it in our stream.
We did that puzzle with the mirrors on it, remember?
Oh.
Right. Wasn't that it? Yeah.
Oh, so Leo, you're taking it as Estevez saying, like, this is so much bigger than we've ever dealt with, that the AWE aura has extended to DC and that Logan is dead because of this?
Not that she even knows that, but just the fact that no altered dude or object or whatever has ever broken out of their equipment to me was like, okay, we're dealing with something that is more powerful than our understanding of these events.
Sure.
Allows for.
I think that the phone argument makes sense to me, but then I think about how they say like he has to draw on reality, and like the dark place has to draw on reality in some way. So at what point is a human no longer real? Like their voice, or they have to be standing right in front of you, or like, is it really taking a person and is it making up a voice out of nothing? Or no, it would be taking David and making him say those things. But isn't that the same as like taking David and making him think those things too?
Well, didn't they say they were like that? They said at the very end that like the different drafts are different versions of yourself. So there is a version of David where Logan's dead, and there is a version of David where Logan isn't dead. It just depends on what draft you're on.
But it also is like, did it reach him to actually change that?
I don't think it would have to. I think
so.
Because Saga called him and talked to him earlier in the story and he was totally nice. Like, I feel like that happening within the range of this event would have technically given it that much to work with, his voice, and, clash it with her self-doubts or whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Randolph Sparks says, this chapter really solidified the Old Gods of Asgard as one of my favorite fictional bands in any media ever. I seriously rank them up there with Death Clock and Spinal Tap. Those are the big three. I really hope the real Finnish band that portrays them, Poets of the Fall, get a big boost from this game because they've earned it. Yeah, I wonder what concerts are like for them. Are there people wearing big AWE t-shirts? STDs and AWE t-shirts?
I was looking at their website. They have so many other, they have so many albums. It's like, it makes me want to go, listen to all their other songs and stuff.
Oh, 4th episode of The Deepest Dive. We just talk about their entire discography.
Just their music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim writes in and says, one of the most memorable scenes from Alan Wake 1 was on a fight on a farm with the Old Gods of Asgard playing. It was an action game, so the Taken went down fairly quickly and you took out a ton of them. They tried to go for something similar in Alan Wake 2, but it didn't work as well because the Taken are so bullet spongy. I turned the difficulty down to story to give it a more action feel, and it was way more enjoyable.
Sure.
Empiric
Another one for the story mode.
There we go.
Story mode.
It's a story game.
mode.
I totally joined you at a certain point, Sarah, too. I was like, I'm bumping it down. I don't want to. I'm good. I don't want any more game over screens. It's going to detract from the story.
You held out longer than I thought you would.
I did.
Because I flipped almost immediately. I was like, that many? A clip? No. A whole clip? No.
Yeah. I did have to pause it and just go take a long, cold shower and just stare at a wall for a while for trying to reason with why I still want to judge Jeffem for bumping Resident Evil 4 down to easy, but I think it's because the gameplay's better constructed than that, so you still should be shamed for that.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I feel
Leo,
the shame.
I thought about it for a long time in there. Empiric
That's
Unicorn.
all in you.
Empiric Unicorn says, I love good rain sounds in video games. Going through the rental cabins at Cauldron Lake and listening to the sounds of rain shifting depending on if you're inside or outside and what kind of material the raindrops are hitting is just delightful. Yeah, nothing better than good rain sounds.
That's fun.
Rain sounds when you're in a car is like my sweet spot. But that's just because I love Jurassic Park and there's so much of that. Ooh, old car rain, absolutely.
It's like tin. It almost sounds like tin.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Green Mountain State says, I love the timey-wimey bit where Saga using the clicker is what brought Alan and Scratch back earlier in the game. 10 out of 10. So I think that's a fun explanation. You know, like if Jeff had that idea of like, you know, writing a mystery surrounding the game or just like having some twists and turns in the plot. I do think that's a fun one. Like, okay, this character brought it back, but it was earlier, and that explains why we're confused about which character is which. You know, that's a fun little...
If you really like that kind of thing,
I do.
I recommend Dark on Netflix. It's a German TV
yeah.
show. It is so good, and the best part, you guys, it actually has an ending.
Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% recommend this show.
I thought you were gonna say the Disney thing with the little ducks, 3 little ducks.
3 little... DuckTales?
DuckTales, yeah. Because you were doing Disney references earlier, so I started talking because I wanted to make sure I got the call back in, but then I couldn't remember DuckTales, so that's where we go.
Everybody mark your calendars. This is the first time Leo's ever botched a joke in the history of him speaking into a microphone. I don't know how to feel
And
it.
Ben's not going to cut this part out, okay?
Oh,
He's
no, I'm
not
going to
cut
double
out.
it. Absolutely. This is a day to recognize something unique has happened. Let's see. So I do like the end of this chapter, like before Saga fully understands what's going on, where she's like, I did everything right. Where is he? And like the camera like flies into the lake and then there's that cool transition. And then bam, you're Alan. Am I correct in thinking, is Initiation 7 Masks the only chapter that doesn't have a title, or did I miss it? I feel like it's just like him talking to Door, and that's kind of it. And then suddenly it's like, all right, Initiation 8, Zane's film. I was like, wait, did I see the Masks thing? They were talking about it, so I assume that's...
Oh, I can't remember now.
I don't think it does, but you know what, chat? Let me know, please. Sarah, if there's good comments in the Twitch chat, you can chime in too.
Somebody said, no joke, Alan Wake 2 has more in common with Kingdom Hearts than people are willing to admit. And that's just something that I can't let into my heart.
Okay.
I refuse.
Block your heart. Make it ice cold. We can do it together.
I'll never become... What are they? Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm also dropping
Heartless?
my jokes today. Heartless! Damn it! It was right there!
Right there, everybody! So now we are Alan Wake again, and you're in the late night back room, except now it's like flooded, and then talking to Mr. Door, and that's when that revelation happens of like, oh, this place was here just to indulge you, Alan Wake. We can stop pretending, take off your mask, all this stuff. But he has that cool...
Yeah. This isn't the normal way to treat me?
He's like, oh, you've been following all these rules, you stupid freak. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's what I thought that was the whole point of this. So is he, I got confused when he said that. Yeah, it's like, so Alan didn't have to make it a horror story at all, but once he did, he had to stick to it, is kind of what I read from that.
Okay.
Is that what you guys got?
I'll go with that, sure. Mr. Door was so cryptic in this section, Haley, that idea of like, oh, you can take your mask off, Mr. Wake, but I don't think you even know who's underneath that mask. Like those types of cool messages. I mean, at this point, I took the note. I'm like, okay, well, Mr. Door is going to be the final boss. Obviously, that's where they're building to. But it's like, no, not really. He's still just going to be a lingering mystery. That's the best we're going to get here.
I do feel validated that Alan and Scratch Alan are still the same person.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that was like the one thing that I picked up and learned was that like they basically were very like the bad you and the good you, it's still you. Mm-hmm. You know?
Mm-hmm. The thing I was most confused about though, like, was that doesn't really track with Alan Wake 1 and American Nightmare Scratch. I like was still trying to think of that. And I think the only thing I left with is that the first 2 times we see Scratch in those 2 instances, it's just the dark place making an Alan copy to F with him. And now the Dark Presence is doing something different and taking him over. Like, I don't think it really makes sense to say all those other times he also was possessed, because he was with Scratch at the same time, looking at him and talking to him and stuff. Like, well, I got confused
because
by that.
we're spiraling down.
Right.
Will we accept that? Jury, will we accept because he's spiraling
Is it the spiral?
down? Bo W. Haley's got your back. They say Alan really sets himself up for all this by failing to realize the spiral nature of the dark place in American Nightmare and thinking of it as a looping failure, when it seems to me that that version of Scratch in American Nightmare, the doppelganger, was actually defeated in a quote-unquote successful part of the spiral. This leads him to continuing to chase Scratch / himself until it's too late and he lets the dark presence in.
I think they probably retconned this a bit and they're like, we kind of want it to be Alan the whole time. We'll just make it Peg. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's fine because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, that was the biggest thing is like when they're like, oh, it was me all along. I'm like, no, it wasn't. That doesn't make sense with anything you said earlier. But anyways, I'll let it slide. That's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah. Modest Lime writes in and says, in all my favorite games, there's a point that the narrative becomes so compelling that it shuts down my primitive gamer brain that needs to explore all areas and find all collectibles. After getting Saga to her point of no return, and then with a tantalizing conversation with Mr. Door in this small part, I knew I was fast-tracked to barreling through the story. Yeah, I mean, this entire section I felt like was just kind of like running downhill. Like, all right, we're flying here.
I almost did it in one sitting, and I only didn't because there's like a memory leak issue on PC where the longer you play, the more it struggles with loading new areas. So I would keep going through doors and coming out the other side and falling through the world, and it happened repeatedly at the same time.
I did do it in one sitting, and I did run into those issues, and I had to like, it was a really funny one where like, not to like skip ahead, but when I got to the old folks' home as Alan, his legs started like slant walking, and I started running into invisible objects, and then when I was running from the dark presence, you go into that one computer room that you solved the puzzle in previously with the dog photos, and the other door wasn't open. So I was just stuck in that room, like soft locked, and I could hear the dark presence outside, like screaming at me, and Alan was just like, and I was just like standing in this room, and I was like, is the door supposed to be open, or am I dead? Sorry, Ben, do you have to time mark those?
Ben's time marking like crazy right now.
No. I got all the time in the world. Somebody else want to say anything? We're good?
Ass.
Oh! Oh, okay, everybody. This is a friendly rated M stream. Come on. Let's see. The Juan 1 writes in and says, Mr. Door might have had the biggest impact and importance not only in this game, but for the rest of the Remedy universe. This leads to the theories that Mr. Door is a version of Hatch in this universe. Oh, that's the Quantum Break. Thank you. And Tim Breaker is a version of Jack characters from Quantum Break. Even Tim Breaker's name being in Quantum Break at the end with Tum Break is what they're connecting with that. I don't know if anybody else had done that.
Okay.
Okay. What is Mr. Door's end game, they ask? Is he going to show up in Control 2? And does Jack / Tim have the same power? Since he knows about the Quantum Break universe, can't wait to see where it leads. Oh, Thwan, I feel like you're putting all your eggs in that Quantum Break basket.
They don't have the rights to it, so they can't even do that if they want, which sucks.
Yeah, they can kind of inch towards it a little bit, which is kind of as much as they've done here.
Maybe they go for licensing their IP back just for this one weird. How do you draft that? Holy crap! We hereby grant you a license to tangentially, meta-narratively reference our.
That's the fun. That's the fun of it, right? Or like maybe that's like Xbox exclusive DLCs, like the Quantum Break.
Haley, offer your services so we can have another Quantum Break game, please.
I'll just like put pictures of myself screaming in black and white in the agreement and see if they notice.
You redact a bunch of stuff.
Brett Vote writes in though, and they said, did any of you notice how intentional Tim Breaker's name is? They have another angle for this. He is an alternate version of Jack Joyce from Quantum Break, the man who broke time, or otherwise known as the Time Breaker. Tim Breaker?
Yeah.
Middle name E.
That's it. They say, Remedy, you did it again.
Remedy!
Brilliant. Everyone has a different theory, I think, for the Tim Breaker name for sure.
Tim Breaker, Alan Waker. Coincidence?
I think not.
Think about that one.
Did you all pick up that Alan Wake is supposed to be a wake, like a period wake? I did not get that.
Did you not get it till now?
No, Alan, till this section, until when they told us, they're like, a wake, Alan Wake.
He does he does say something like, I truly feel awake now. Yeah.
But it's not just that. Alan, I believe, is a Celtic name meaning bright or light.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I was doing research for Thanksgiving
Alan.
jokes.
Yeah.
Gabe
Not
B.
for the deepest dive.
No, who needs that? Gabe B writes in, they said, as you are leaving the protection booth at the end of a chapter, a line in a longer writing on the wall says, night springs when bright falls. I don't know if I'm dumb for not connecting those two names before this, but I audibly gasped when I read that connection between Night Springs and Bright Falls.
I feel like that's what they were doing in this last section is like, you dummy, you didn't notice this? And they were just like throwing it at us so obvious. Like, hence the spiral thing at the end made me feel so stupid because I was like, obviously. I'll save that until the end. We'll go chronologically, but oh my God.
Yeah, everybody in those forums talking about Alan Wake for the last 13 years. Here's some of the fun, obvious stuff they realized that now we'll shove down your throats type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
which I like. Like, there's so much we talked about as things, well, that seemed confusing, but it's because here's the rules of why he has to write this way or whatever. A lot of that stuff was made text in this section, and I really appreciated that. It wasn't like you have to have all this outside knowledge. It did have those kinds of answers.
Yeah. Let's see. I do like this section where then enemies are in the late night area, and then like the doors are open, and it's just Ati like on the far side of the room, and he's like, "Hurry, Tom, hurry!" And he's like screaming for you to come there. Like it is, we talked about the comforting feeling of Ati before. It's nice to have it very deliberate of like him in the light being like, "Come here, Tom, come here!" As you're literally just reaching out and running, trying to get near him, grabbing his hand.
They did such a good job making him a comforting presence. Like they executed that perfectly.
Except when he scared the crap out of me with Saga's part.
That is true.
Right.
I also like the part later on when Adi tells you, "Don't let the pound your pants." It's a good saying.
How many of those do you think are like...
Even translation, with the translation in there, it still works.
I'm wondering how many of those are actual like old Finnish sayings and how much of it is just...
Definitely are all real, I bet.
Definitely, you bet? Could
Yeah.
be. All right, let's see. Then we're in Alan Initiation 8, Zane's film. Very exciting sequence here. Let's see. Sean Mills says, the biggest jump scare I've had in the game happened after you watch the video of Alan shooting Thomas Zane at the Overlook Hotel. You were left looking at a frozen video of Zane with a bullet hole in his head. I started looking around the room and suddenly Zane woke up and wiped the blood off his forehead while telling someone off screen they got a good take. I don't know what was going on in that scene, but it really got me on the jump scare level.
That's cool. I came into this conversation thinking there was an objectively biggest jump scare in the game that we're going to be talking about, though. So we'll see how everybody else felt about that.
I mean, lob it out there, man.
In the mine place, when you turn around off the board.
No. I don't
think the guy
jumps
at you.
See, yes.
I have a question. I don't know if that's in story mode. Because I didn't get that one.
I don't know if I had that one either.
I
Leo.
didn't get spooked in the Nine Pal place.
I wasn't in story mode.
I also don't think I got that. Jump.
Did you get a weird
Did you
thing?
put like everything on the board?
I would think so. Yeah. Maybe there's something that was still locked out for a weird way.
You're putting all your self-conscious stuff on the board and you're getting really dark and twisted.
Who jump scares you?
You turn around and it's like a cult member is in the room with you and jumps at you and then disappears.
I never got that.
I screamed.
Whoa.
It was so scary.
Jumpo is totally with you. Jumpo says, none of the jump scares in the game really got me, but the one in the final scene with the case board where a Cult of the Tree member suddenly appears and disappears completely caught me off guard because it's so unlike the other scares. And it's in the one place that's been safe for the entire game.
Which I knew something like that was coming, but it's like you're so wrapped up in something else that you stop thinking about it. And that's like a perfect jump scare. But yeah, it was turning around to go to profile from being
Did they just disappear or did you have to fight them?
They just disappeared, yeah.
So people are saying it doesn't happen if you don't turn around. So maybe that's what it was. Like it's.
But don't you have to turn around to profile?
Yeah, I've turned around.
I would
maybe you do it a certain order.
Unless you just switch through the menu or something?
Did you do it from right up next to the board, or were you far away?
I don't know.
Oh, I think I looked up from profiling and looked at the board, and then when I left profiling, I went like that.
Sure. Yeah, I was up close to the board and then had to turn around to see the profiling.
Oh. Clearly, I was just doing my Mind Place board too well.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I was Pinteresting too well. Just putting all my little Logan photos, one by one, another one, and another one, and another one.
And that's it. Okay, yeah, so running back to the hotel, let's go recycle the environments one more time. Like I think, again, we've talked about it before, but I think this game does such a good job of reusing a bunch of different environments, but always
telling us
making...
it's because of a loop.
Yeah, it's because of a loop or there's some modification in the environment, but it's still like, all right, we're going to meet Zane at a hotel again. And I feel like in a lot of their games, you'll be like, okay, really? But it's like, okay, it's going to be a quick little run up there, or the different environments you're going to be in are going to be remixed in some funky way that I do think is a great job about that.
I didn't even think about how I usually get annoyed by that now that you mention it. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll go back.
Yep, that's it.
That's something I love about the spiral line. Contextualizing it as a spiral is like you look back and you go, yeah, it was. All those times you were running around those things we thought were closed loops to get to things that are changed and then changed further and then drilling down deeper into like the answer, what you're really looking for there. Like that is exactly what was going on. So much more than just a loop.
Yeah. And I was so excited in this section too. Like
Sarah, I love to you're like, okay, guys.
It is it. No,
All the other
Leo's
developers that
is
recycle
totally right.
environments should have just called it a spiral. And
Spiral. I mean, Leo's like
golden.
100% right, but just sitting here and being like, it's so much more than a loop. It just makes me want to like take my headphones and smash them on the ground and walk away.
It's true. It's a loop with some progress. That's the point of the spiral,
so much
you know?
more than a loop.
It is.
Sarah wrote in my chat, it's not a staircase, it's an escalator.
Sarah, that's perfect. You get it. See, what are you talking about? You understand this game.
No, the thing is like, I do get it. I
I know.
But I no longer... I refuse to elaborate on the other concepts of the game that they just refuse to answer for. Like, that they refuse to give me, little hints for,
Sure.
Like, at the end of the day, I'm like, solving this isn't going to, like, clear my skin or, like, make me sleep better, It's just, it is what it is. It doesn't matter.
It's just a story, Sarah. Don't you get it?
Stories are the most
Without an
important thing in the
ending.
world.
Stories are also
Without
life,
an ending.
Well, if you want to look at it that way, it's a spiral. Anyways, but I was very excited.
Well, if you choose to look at it that way, Sarah, that it doesn't have an ending.
Every argument you just end with, it's a spiral.
Yeah, come on, it's moving somewhere in particular. But just on a very practical level, I was so excited in this section when it's like, all right, now we're going to the movie theater, going to the cinema. Like, again, I'm just so excited to explore that new environment. It's like, okay, I know this environment isn't going to be frustrating. It's just going to be cool and like small and self-contained. And then having like the shadows in there, like watching the film, I thought was such a cool idea. Then you put on the forbidden film and suddenly they jump awake, or like even just the environment detail of like, I guess to jump to the end of this section of just like having that weird murder scene in the projection booth with like the moose skull, and they're being like held up, and there's like the celluloid. There's like the celluloid pile and stuff as they're all strung up. Like everything just looks so awesome in this little environment. I was so excited to explore it. Even though if the outside area, I was a little bit frustrated by in a very what now is a classic Alan Wake 2 situation. Yeah, it's just a lot of like, all right, where do I go? And I'm jumping between 4 different versions of all these catwalks to find where they were thrown off. Like, let me get back to the small theater, please. I'm more excited about that.
Totally.
But I also love that detail too of where it's like, oh, the theater's locked. What are we gonna do? But it's like, oh, we have that ticket, and then you like slide the ticket for the movie into the little ticket booth, and then you just hear that weird muffled voice be like, enjoy the film, sir. And then the doors open, you can finally get into theaters. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Dixon Denham, Sarah, I don't think I heard a hell yeah out of you.
You get a hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Hey. Dixon Denham writes in and says, finding the tied-up actor who plays Alex Casey was the perfect encapsulation of the Alan Wake 2 experience. Here's the game's director finally using his real voice while bluntly guiding the player on what not to do next. You don't have to go get that knife and stab me. You slash Alan knowingly play along in order to keep the story moving forward. And for the first time, I found Sam Lake's self-inclusion to be genuinely unsettling and not just kind of goofy. This is truly one of my favorite sequences in the game. It might even be my favorite sequence. That entire idea of going through that loop/spiral, and it's like, okay, is this looping? No,
just spiral. It's confirmed
just spiral.
loop.
It's confirmed spiral. Like things are changing just enough, and then there's that bit where it's like, okay, I think that's Alex Casey tied up on that chair, but then you walk around the room, and like as you go by a pillar, as you get to the other side of the pillar, like it's gone, and then just to have that twist of like, okay, it's not Alex Casey. This is Sam Lake, the actor who plays Alex Casey, and he's screaming for help, but also telling you, like, if you want to make progress, this is what you have to do, but don't do it because it's so messed up. It feels like such a classic video gamey thing. I guess it's basically, little sisters from BioShock of like, okay, you got to kill these little sisters if you want to make progress. It's like, would you really do it? In this case, it's like, you want to pick up that knife, you're going to have to stab this dude. And then, nope, he just breaks free the second you pick up a knife. But I thought that was so fun. What a hoot to try and murder that man.
He has a line.
I was upset that he
when
ran
he's
away
Casey,
so fast.
And he says, I don't know where to look to break the fourth wall. And that made me think of that scene. It's like, you're breaking it, but like how? I don't really know because you're yourself, but also your character.
Yes.
So are you breaking the fourth wall? Probably, question mark. It's just like, I think it's interesting that fourth wall breaks aren't clear because usually it's the most obvious, like wink. And you're like, I'm in on the joke. But right now I'm like, is it real? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's fun.
No, I'm totally with you. Like, I think all the echoes in this section were so fun for just playing with that dynamic where they're like, Alex Casey, you have fulfilled your purpose as a fictional character. You have brought the writer here. And then Alex Casey just won't stop freaking out about like, why was I in that movie? Why was I in that horror movie from way in the past? You'd explain it. And then it's such the fun part of this game is having Alex Casey just scream, who the am I? Which is like the best encapsulation. Like, is he Max Payne? Is he Sam Lake? Is he a little bit of everything at once? Why is he here? Just to have a character scream about that. That's certainly my catnip. I love it.
Yeah, that was great. And there's a lot there that I fully don't get. And that's one of those things that I'm excited to keep thinking on.
Yeah.
The implications of all that, because it is like, you don't have to get it. That dialogue is just chilling and interesting to have that character grapple with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just to come back to Sam Lake too, I thought he was genuinely a great actor in that bit too. And he's like, oh no, he's screaming when you're like getting the knife and stuff. I really thought that was so well done.
That's because someone did it for real life in order to get that.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was based on a real thing that happened to him.
Yeah. And then there's that in the Echo too, there's that bit where Alex Casey is talking to Ilmo. At a certain point, Alex Casey's like, what the have you been smoking? And Ilmo's just like, nightless night, a clip of the lost film survived, like that whole thing. But like just the idea that apparently seeing just a glimpse of this old Finnish film is enough to make them fully twisted. But then I was like, it's talking to Ilmo in that Echo, right? So does that have any relevance for where he ended up in the story?
I think this is a sub story again, which brings up the argument that like we're in our own sub story of Tom. Like, I really think that's where they're going long term with this, and like that's why it doesn't make sense right now. And it seems so obvious, but maybe there'll be an extra. It's not a sub story; it's a metaverse. You know what I mean? They'll do something in the third thing, but like the way that Casey, because Casey keeps dying, but not the Casey we know,
right?
And Alan keeps dying, and he looks just like Thomas Zane in the same way. Like, you know how Alex Casey and then the real Alex Casey that exists in the real world that I guess Alan Wake based his character on is kind of like the same thing with Thomas Zane making Alan Wake, basing him off himself, maybe? Like, I don't know, something there. There's something there.
Sure.
And we have to wait 13 years to figure it out.
Gladly. Yeah, I thought, I've seen some discussion online. Maybe somebody wrote into the podcast, what I'm thinking of actually, with that idea of like, all right, Sony in their games are the main culprit of like telling you exactly what to do the second you walk into a room. It's just like, hey, Aloy, go over here to solve the puzzle, you idiot, like that type of thing. And like how this game is like, we could use a little more guidance. This section was one that I was kind of bummed out by, and I'm sure it came from like focus testing and they needed to do it, but I thought it was a cool idea that was immediately deflated. But when you're going to the movie theater, there's that bit where Zane is in the film in the glimpse of Nightless Night, or Yotan Yo, that film where he's holding the lamp, and the way you get forward or make it progress is to go up and like transfer your light to him in the movie. But I feel like they didn't give me a second to realize that that's what we're supposed to do before it's them being like, oh, the lamp isn't lit in the movie. I guess we should go light his lamp for us. Like, okay, well.
Yeah, you're right. That was too quick.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea that it just feels like, okay, maybe they had to do it, but it's a little bit of a bummer. I wanted to have that natural epiphany of like, oh, interact with the movie theater. Because I thought it was so cool, like later on too, when there's like the cult member in the deer mask that's like on the projector screen, and then they like go open that door, then you like go through that door into the movie. It's some good stuff. Good purple Rosa Cairo stuff for you, Jeff. You Woody Allen nut. Barry W. writes in to say, hey, did all of you watch the entirety of Zane's movie in the theater?
Yes.
In the moment, it felt like 5 minutes, but then I realized it was actually a full 15 to 20 minute short film. I can't even fully explain why, but it kept me captivated the whole time. Also, a funny note is that Sam Lake originally wrote himself completely nude in the woods/sacrifice scene, but on the day of filming, he couldn't bring himself to do it, so he just went shirtless instead. Coward.
Oh, wow.
You can have boundaries.
Coward.
Fine. Oh,
Boo
Can't
this
write
man.
an ending. Can't go naked in his own fucking video game. Coward.
Easy. There was a bit where it's like him in the sauna where it's like, I think there's some pubes there. I think.
No.
No?
It was a little blurred.
It was just, they just blurred
They
out.
steamed it up.
I see.
did get my ritual sacrifice though, which I am grateful for, because I was complaining earlier that like they were doing all these ritual sacrifices and I didn't get to see them.
Right.
But I did. So thanks, Sam Lake.
JKK in the chat just said it's not a pube, it's a
It's a spiral, JKK says.
It's a short and curly.
Really excellent work. That short film. Let's see. Jared Pierce wrote in saying, I've been playing the game without subtitles to try to immerse myself a bit more by forcing myself to pay attention to the words being said rather than just reading. However, I ran into a little issue with this as there were no subtitles added for the Nightless Night short film.
Oh,
Could be
no,
confusing.
really?
Having half of it, watching half of it, having no clue what was being said. Given how esoteric and disjointed it is, I'm not sure how much understanding I really missed out on, but still. That is a weird idea. It seems like they should have done that if you have subtitles
I
off.
guess you really immersed
Absolutely.
yourself though.
That's
Do they
it.
subtitle
That's what you
Ati
should've learned.
when he breaks into Finnish if you don't have subtitles on?
I'd assume
And I think that's what
not.
they're saying is, there's just no subtitles if you
Yeah.
just turn subtitles off, but it like defaults to on
Yeah.
for the game, so I had it on the entire time.
But
Alan
even
Wake
when
probably
Ati
doesn't speak
speaks-
Finnish.
Even when Ati speaks outside of this film in Finnish, it just says like it spells out the Finnish words. It doesn't translate it. It's only
Yeah.
the movie it translates, right?
Right.
I guess
Yeah,
so.
I have subtitles on to focus on the words more personally.
Right.
Me too.
Yeah, I like that. I like that short film. That feels like one of those things that starts with like,
cool.
okay, let's have some short film. Could we actually make it? Yeah, we got to do it. We got to lean into it and just make this entire thing, even though it has some real immortality vibes. I think as you're going through it, I think a lot of this game towards the end had me thinking about immortality. That idea of all right, a lot of live action, a lot about the power of art, yada yada yada. You start to feel it more and more. But I loved
yeah.
it. It's just it feels like, even though it's a quote unquote horror film, I suppose, like you can feel how much fun they're having making it as you're watching
Yeah.
it. And there's something so charming and appealing that's like, oh, it just feels like making movies with my friends in high school or something. And you're just thrilled that they get to have that much fun making this stuff.
Yeah,
You can
they
tell
didn't have
after
to
they
do
hit
it.
cut, they laughed. Like,
Yes.
like that's the second they cut, they all were like,
And threw Sam like a towel. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Also,
I like
interesting
this.
move to give away the last line of the game as the last line of Yo.
I didn't even notice that. Someone
Really?
pointed out later was like, yes, Sam like says that at the end of this movie, and then
Yeah.
it's the final line of the game. I didn't even notice that.
I thought it was interesting too because I wrote it down as the final line from the movie, and then it's like, oh, I kind of felt like it was kind of robbing it a little bit at the end of like, okay, it's not really the.
had
There's
more
also a
effect,
line
Ray.
that I noticed during Haley's stream when Saga's doing her mind plays. She says, "The cult is where I started to spiral." Is like what she says.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
was like,
I like that.
is that like another hint in the spiral direction?
Right.
That that's where she like the cult is when she like entered it and she started to like go down.
Sure, descending on the spiral. Yeah, I like seeing live action Ati. That's fun to have him here and him trying to get a job at the FBC at a certain point. It's like, okay, that's cool to kind of put a little timestamp in this thing.
Interesting.
Let's see.
I didn't ever think about him at like applying to be a janitor. Like,
Right.
I thought he was beyond that, but
An
it's
immortal
interesting.
being of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that shot too on the dance floor when Sam Lake's character like looks over and sees like the two cult members, deer guys, like dancing with each other before they come and attack him. Just good stuff.
They're in love.
They're clearly in love. That's another whole story that we can tell.
I was thinking about how they have to like must be getting the props first and then making 3D models of them. They can't. It'd be so much harder to do it the other way around. I mean, deer masks or something you could do specifically, but like just Alan Wake's revolver. Like they probably found the revolver first.
Yeah, true. They probably just got all the live action stuff organized and then gave it to the animators to make.
So they for like the set too, right? Like the TV set. You'd probably want
Yeah.
to do it first in case something changed last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
true.
it's cheaper to like change something in a game than like reshoot.
Yeah. Back at Game Informer, when we visited Remedy for the Quantum Break trip, sit down, Sarah, please sit. I beg of you to sit down during this boring anecdote. But, there's like the whole live action show in Quantum Break, and they said that they sent over like video game assets. Like, all right, we built out this environment. Let's send the video game assets to the live action team that's going to be shooting the TV show sections of Quantum Break. And they sent them all that stuff, and then they shot the show, the live action team, and then sent back the footage. And Remedy people were like, what the hell is this? Because apparently in the environment that they sent over to them, they included a white box accidentally from like the video game assets. And then the people making the show thought that it was like, well, they just clearly want like a white rectangle over here. So they built that in reality, and then that was like in the live action of the show. It's like, okay. But the beauty then is you see the show and you say, genius meta commentary. There's a white box.
Remedy, you've done it again.
Can't be stopped.
That was in the final product?
I don't know. I don't know if it was in like test footage that they sent back, or I'd be surprised if it made the final product, but it certainly should.
That's really funny.
Let's see. Then at a certain point, Alan Wake gets the call from himself, the call from the future. And then Alan Wake is like, oh, my own Deus Ex Machina? Really? And this is the whole part. It's like, all right, you need to go get the photos in the shoebox and then put it up by the statue, all that fun stuff. I was a little bit confused where it's like, go get the photos from the shoebox in the basement. I was like, where would that be exactly? It's a lot of wandering around that environment. Like, where's the place where the stuff would be stored?
Dude, my chat was nice, and they told me to go. I got those earlier in the game. Like, I went and got those and then looked at that TV screen when Alan has a breakdown. So I already had the pictures, so I just had to run up and put them in the shoebox.
Cool.
It's weird that it let you get that sooner, though. I didn't really get why that was even an option.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, why not make it a one, you go get it when you need to go get it thing?
Right.
There's so many things that, do not work that way. That is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you are going into the going back into this apartment again, which was, that freaked me out a fair bit. Going to the apartment, like hearing like the weird heavy breathing. And it's like, okay, this is such a small space. And they did that. Mr. Scratch is writing on the other side of this door. And I know there's going to be some stupid jump scare.
Got me.
Yeah. It's just
that was one of the worst ones.
Just a buzzer on the door handle. It's like, I know this is coming, but all right, I'll grab this door. Okay. Yeah, there we go. You got me.
I did. Enough. I was like, what's in here?
Oop, 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 oop. So then, this is then Alice talking about how it wasn't Scratch living with her, it was Wake. And then Alan Wake is like, oh, I was the one that was haunting Alice the whole time. I had stopped myself trying to fix the manuscript. Were320 says, watching Alice record herself jumping into Cauldron Lake, it felt clear to me that she was going back to the dark place. Alan seeing her in the wellness center in Return 8 cemented that, and then the mid-credit scene confirmed that she is in the dark place. I'm curious how Remedy will explain how the woman with a ridiculously extreme darkness phobia in the first game was willing to go to the dark place.
Yeah, they kind of forget that the whole first game, she's like, I am so scared of darkness, I can't even like be in a room with the lights off. And she's like, I'll jump into Cauldron Lake, sure.
And I'll take some cool photos of myself doing it. I thought that was a really
They were
cool
a little
presentation.
blurry though.
She's not a great photographer.
I feel like if I was like doing my final
She's
photo,
as
I'd
good
at
of a
least make
photographer as Wake is a writer.
She only had one try, Leo. That is true.
That was effective. The silence of the
Yeah.
little slideshow of her jumping in, that was really good and creepy, I thought.
Yeah.
I'm glad there was no music there. It needed to be dead quiet so you could just be like, oh gosh, like this is really depressing.
Yeah, and there's that part later on too. God, I think is it when Alex Casey like drops the clicker that it also goes to like almost like the black and white photos of like douche, douche, douche as it's going down.
You see the photo of them, like the hand grab it. And
Right.
Like,
Bread wrote in saying,
I love art.
Bread wrote in saying, I can't be the only one who immediately saw Alice's grand ruse of committing suicide, right? Did everyone think, well, this isn't really real? I mean,
I thought she died.
Okay, yeah, I did too. Even though I was confused about the nature of how dead she could be if it's just a dark place thing, but we've already unpacked that a fair bit.
I didn't really notice that, like, when I looked at the pictures of her jumping, I just thought it was a cliff, and then it was only later on I was like, oh, the lake's behind. I didn't even look at the background, only the foreground. But if I had noticed the background, I would have been like, oh, it's Cauldron Lake. She just is diving in to go get out.
She jumped from like really high, considering Thor and Odin just sort of like awkwardly waded into the lake.
Right,
They were
right.
like, we're going in. I don't know. I guess it's just however you want to make your appearance.
Yeah. So then we're back to this whole section on the lake shore as Saga trying to capture evil Alan Wake / Mr. Scratch basically in a big Ghostbusters trap. But let's see. Shoji Kodo says, Thor and Odin are just so badass. When waking up as Alan immediately after things went sideways with Scratch, I couldn't help but feel motivated as I watched those two slowly wade into Cauldron Lake without hesitation so they could, quote, head to their next gig in order to save Saga before finally fading into the Dark Places vortex. Yeah, I love that shot just of them walking into the lake going, don't screw it up, Tom! That's all I got.
Someone pointed out when they went into the lake, since everything's all time wonky, they probably are going in there and doing the show, even though it happened in the past.
The Alan Wake musical.
Oh, that is fun. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that. That does make sense. I think the juxtaposition got me where it's just so goofy with those two walking into the lake going, don't screw it up, Tom. And then it is immediately followed by Alan Wake doing a self-serious monologue where he's like, I've seen it all before, like a horror movie I've been made to watch over and over again. It's just the perfect tone of this game of just like, all right, goofy, and then Alan Wake just like, yeah, but come on, you guys. Luca A says, I love how Agent Estevez at this point has given up all formalities. It's very reminiscent of Jesse and other characters from Control who had to deal with enough crap. She even mentions wanting a t-shirt from Old Guards of Asgard at the beginning of the summoning song. She's a fan inside a Fed. I do like Alan Wake is talking to Estevez on this beach and he's like, I saw Thor and Odin when I was trapped in there. They performed in my musical. And then immediately Estevez goes, I'm immediately less optimistic about this. Just like, okay, I'm dealing with a guy who had a musical dedicated to himself in this environment. I do like how loose Estevez got during this entire section. She's definitely a much more fun character.
She's perfect for like how they wrote her was perfect for like what these scenes needed. She didn't need to be like the hard, like, you guys are messing it up or too silly. She was just like, this is okay. Like she was very good.
Yep. And then they explained that and you've touched on this a little bit, Haley, but the real Alex Casey was lured to this location because Alan Wake started writing about him.
Then they said that, I wrote that down because I'm like, oh, that's like the first time, because that's always been a thought of mine. Are people real or are we writing them into reality?
Right.
Can we do that? Is that a rule? Like, do we always have to use real assets when we make our stories, the dark presence? And like, because I still think Nightingale's not real, like for my own personal like thought. I just don't think Nightingale was real because in the first game, especially because he feels like such a plot device. Like all he does is move you forward and he has no other characterization besides that. So I was like, that would make sense that he's something Alan wrote up in the story in order to move him along more quickly to get to his ending. Like it's just sloppy, right? Like a bad writer will be like, how do I get him to find Cynthia? It's like, well, there could be like a very specific reason that he ends up with Cynthia. Instead, it's just a guy shot at me and I ran and then I was with Cynthia. Like that's so lazy, but it makes sense for someone who's like typing on their typewriter, like just do something. So it would make sense that Nightingale was not real, but then maybe Nightingale was just a real dude who he wrote into the story and it dragged him into Washington. Like some guy out who is Nightingale got pulled in like through some weird energy or something. And that would kind of make sense for the David thing too, is like it can kind of go like this and bring people in and then affect them greater, maybe.
Right.
Or via phone wires. I don't know what the rules are. It's just like
The Dark Place actually operates on 5G.
It does,
at this point.
probably.
That's why no one should trust 5G. Twitchy Little Ferret writes in, they say, on that theory of that's Thor and Odin going into the lake to perform the Alan Wake musical. Twitchy Little Ferret says, what about Baldur, who was also in the concert, but he didn't go into the lake? And in theory, he was dead, right? What's that?
Dead.
He was dead, but he was in the musical.
Was he maybe already in the dark place?
When you die, you go to the dark place.
Well, maybe that was AWE 2, was like maybe he died in AWE 2 and he's in the dark, or he died, but like the FBC cover up was that he died and he actually is in the dark place this whole time and he can't get out, but Thor and Odin can.
What? Maybe
Who's Baldur?
Baldur's the third member
He's
of the
got a
band.
gate.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
The gate guy.
Mr. Gate. Philly,
And Sarah, can you stop calling it the dork place? It's really condescending. We liked it.
we see you writing on that whiteboard behind you. Philly Yeatsteak writes in, they say, after you switch back to Alan on the lakeshore, it plays the original game's score as you run through the woods and you fight through Taken. Great throwback moment. And Porn Curly also wrote in saying,
cool.
in between return 7 and 8, when he plays Alan from scratch, is no longer part of them. You get to run through the woods and get and shoot some Taken. It's a great throwback. The first game, the best strategy is to use old audio cues and sounds from the first game during this entire section.
I got lost like crazy. I could not find the hill I needed to climb up, and I got mad.
Yeah, you just got to make your way to the car over and over again in this game. That's the structure here.
True.
Reed. Okay, well, this is, I guess, this is the part then. This is the part where Alan Wake then says, "All right, I need to go back into the dark place myself to put things right." I was very confused with it. Like, okay, now the dark place is just like a portal in the town, and you can just kind of jump into it.
Scratches
Because Scratch, right?
Yeah. So like Deerfest you go to where it's all sunny and happy is reality. It's just like the dark place is coming into reality now and affecting it. That's what I thought was happening.
Oh, I didn't take that.
So like the portal he goes to is return almost coming true, and like reality and the dark place are blending together at this point is what I thought was going on.
But he's inside Scratch's ending, so I thought, but that ending.
But
is
that's like another draft. There's several.
But that's reality. You're saying the reality is Scratch's ending.
I mean, what do we define a
Yeah.
reality as? You know, like we went there and it was there and it was real to the people who were there and it was real for us while we were there for the short time we were there.
Yeah, it's real to me. Damn it.
But are they all just NPCs or do they have consciousness? Are they just there?
Is it actually just a video game?
Is it just a video
Consider
game?
it
Well, it is a video game. I mean, we saw that from the emails.
I got the sense that because Alex Casey went to the town and then didn't he use the clicker there, and that was him like creating the dark place.
Right.
Because I got the sense that that the Deerfest was the dark place, and that's why when Alan Wake got there, he was like, "Oh, this was not what I was expecting."
Yeah, I think so too.
Because it seemed like more positive.
But it's just so confusing to have him jump in. And I mean, I understand this is the core fun of the game, but to have him jump into that dark place, and it's like, all right, I'm inside Scratch's ending, but it's his ending for the book Return. But then everybody in that town is celebrating the release of the book Return. So the ending of his book.
Because it's meta. The book is meta.
I see.
And that lends it to the read that Scratch is like a part of Alan that's always been there, like his negative qualities, because that's like him being so
obsessed
vain that
with himself.
Not only is he a character in it, and it ends with everybody loving the book he just wrote.
Yeah.
Like that's something that a separate villain wouldn't really do, but somebody who was like the bad parts of Alan might.
Yeah.
All the little people you walk by are like, "Oh, I get it." They did, like they literally were saying, "Remedy, you've done it again." Like,
Yeah, that was the entire section.
Alan Wake.
Yep. John M. writes in and says, I love the hyperbolic statements made by NPCs during Deerfest. Like, Casey and Saga are the greatest cop duo in fiction. Or, Saga's loss of Logan is such a beautiful metaphor for the sacrifices a woman makes when pursuing a career.
Oh my God, dude. I was like, shut up.
Remedy knows they are not reinventing these well-used tropes, and they can poke fun at themselves with quotes like this. The game somehow never felt pretentious despite a concept that seems ripe for it. Did you have that situation where, like, walking through the Deerfest crowd, I swear I would, like, hear Rose? I'm like, oh, where is she? And then I couldn't find her. Or maybe I was just, maybe just everyone was praising Alan Wake so much that I thought it was Rose. But I was looking for, like, specific people to talk to. And it's like, oh, no, this is just kind of general Walla Walla sounds from the crowd.
You see Norman in his towel?
Oh, I missed him. Where was he?
Yeah.
I feel like the real question is, why is that man always in a towel? Like...
They'll explain in the DLC, Sarah. Don't worry about it.
Write him some clothes, please. It's going to be this great plot point. I can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
I also took a look at his legs. I couldn't really see the vein issue we were talking about last time. His feet were a little blue, but I was led to believe that he had some insane veins. And
I was also led to believe there was going to be dust on things, and I didn't see any dust.
Well, it all got better. Reed wrote in, they say, check out the Coffee World pop-up booth at Deerfest. They're selling Mocha Moose dogs for $4. So,
oh, no.
So Mocha died for this deal. Imagine eating a beloved animal and washing it down with the drink that killed it. Good thing
Coffee and hot dogs.
That's the true horror.
Oh, brings me back to my childhood. Is it good thing there aren't any kids in the Bright Falls area to be scarred by this? It seems like it would.
That's a good
It could have been a
point.
steak at least.
There's no children, and like Logan never really appears.
Oh yeah,
I'll be honest.
because all
I
the
didn't
kids are
notice.
moving away. That's kind of like what small town vibes are, right?
Yeah, I
Even
guess
the
so.
2-year-olds are moving out west.
They're packing it up.
I was struck by I think it's when you're in the police station and if you like run outside and it's like a downpour and rain, there's so many NPCs just like standing in the rain looking at the
Freaking
police station. Yeah, it's like, what is happening in this town? Go inside, everybody.
Everyone
They were
was
like taking selfies with the controlled light boxes.
Right.
One guy was.
Yeah.
That's fun. Let's see. Steve Elution says, this was plenty of fun for me. Good, thank you. As short as the chapter was, it was nerve-wracking. It was a nerve-wracking treat to be forced to go through the dread of revisiting the nursing home and the horrifying discovery I would have to make my way through the wellness center knowing that something was going to happen. It made the attack by the dark presence no less intense. Also, Rose is maybe the most unsettling character in the game. That woman has the cold, dead eyes of a civil servant. It was very fun to finally get to interact with Rose, I guess, again, as Alan, and just to have her be like, oh my God, Alan. He's like, wait, are you Rose from the diner? She's like, I'm here to save you, silly. I've gotten all your messages. He's like, what the hell is happening here? That's
I like
fun.
the thought that Rose maybe is also some kind of peri-utilitarian, but she's just never been utilized. So she's just using her powers of like lust and fanfic writing to like help.
And then the whole, so you're running through the old folks home. This was a surprise to everybody, right? That the writing room was at the top of the old folks home. Or did everyone else already piece that together from the windows?
I
was
saw the
wondering.
windows.
I didn't notice that at
Okay.
all.
Only Sarah.
Only Sarah,
Sarah.
the once and future queen of
Someone's
observation.
been looking up lore vids and watching them and paying attention.
But then it's like the idea that like the entire time Alan Wake's been like in the attic of a nursing home. I also feel like is kind of funny to me.
Well, it is
Right
mine.
away.
I guess so, yeah.
That's a really significant location for a lot of
He's an
things in
old
this story,
soul.
more than I expected when we first arrived there.
Oh wait,
Isn't-
Snake says I assume Alice was sending Rose the messages. Ooh, that would make more sense.
Other people have said that as well. Yeah.
That's a good
pretty
point.
good.
That's definitely
Once
true. then.
again, the women of this series are carrying the men on their backs, kicking and screaming. Like, hello?
off-screen.
What's going on here? Yeah, they're drowning. They're willingly drowning to save their man. And honestly, these men, not worth saving, in my opinion.
Except for the old guards of Asgard.
And when they're
And
Yeah,
crawling
they can
around,
save
Right.
themselves.
Yeah, if all the men were crying and begging for mercy more,
Yeah.
maybe they'd be okay for you. It's complicated.
Only if they skitter across their desk like a little rat.
But didn't Tom Zane build what used to be the old
Yes.
nursing home?
Yes, of course.
It was his,
So
like, it was his, like, creative-
building, and it's his
like-
writer's room.
Yeah. And he built
my
it like
God,
for
yeah.
creatives and like a creative compound because all artists are crazy.
Or it's been
Why
him
lack
up there
emotional
writing the whole
intelligence?
time.
So when did he build the cabin on Cauldron Lake then and just mimicked his previous writer's room?
Oh, because the writer's room looks like the cabin at Cauldron Lake?
The cabin at Cauldron Lake in Alan Wake 1 has the writer's room in it.
Oh.
That's where it's from originally.
Oh, okay. That's helpful.
Yes. So the fact that it's two places, either it's reality bending nonsense, as we have attested for most other stuff, or he like loved that room so much he remade it, and he's the one who built the cabin on Cauldron Lake? Question mark.
Could
I
be.
think like they need to answer this whole like Tom versus Alan thing because they were dragging that on through the entire third chapter, like calling Alan Tom and like
Yeah.
Tom ascending out of a murder well during the movie, and I'm like, you need to answer this, and then they didn't, and I was like, cowards.
Yeah, Haley, what's your
Cowards.
final verdict? Because last episode you're like, I don't think that's the real Thomas Zane. But now have you changed your tune?
I still think who is Thomas Zane is still going to be like a huge question mark thing that they're going to draw
Really?
out
Okay.
in 3. I don't think that's him in the same kind of way I
What?
didn't think it was Scratch we were playing as in that moment.
I'm starting to
because
think,
it doesn't
Haley, a lot
match.
of like your confusion is coming from the fact that like maybe the first game was just bad and they're trying to like rewrite a lot of their sins.
and like
And now it's just getting even more
Retcon it.
confusing. Yeah.
yeah, perhaps that's true.
Bo M writes in, Sarah, I'm kind of feeling a dark presence coming from you. And it's like,
Honestly, thinking about this Alan Wake 2 game puts me in the dark place sometimes.
What? You were so hot on it in the second chunk. You had your full roller coaster ride now?
Yeah, because that was the good chunk, and
I
then
see,
they never.
I see.
And then this chunk is definitely like the weakest for me.
Okay, all right.
Weakest chunk.
Bo M says, with Alan and Alice now in the dark place and the dark presence having already inhabited Wake, I think it's possible we're headed for a flip-flop of Thomas Zane and Barbara Jagger's claimed ending from this House of Dreams blog, which was written by Sam Lake. Long story short, the bright and dark presence take Tom and Barbara's physical forms while their essences continue deeper into a paradise baby universe created by Thomas's secret final poem they share forever.
Okay, so more on the Disney connection.
Right. I'm wondering if the ascension at the end of the spiral referred to by Alice is them reaching that point, except the bright presence will take Alice's form while dark is Alan. Says Bo. Just for some good Thomas Zane stuff for you, Haley.
Love it.
Real quick note. I loved, I think my favorite song in the game is the one that's at the end of Return 8, the Deerfest chapter, where it's just called No One Left to Love. It's a little bit poppier, but like the singer's just belting it out, and I think it rules.
I like that one too.
Thank you. It goes a little something like this. Let's see. Make it unclear. Well, I guess now we're playing a saga in the dark place. And this is another one of those things, maybe just how efficient they've been with environments of like, I should have fully expected that they would swap spots. It's such an easy move and it makes it interesting of like, okay, now what do they do in each other's environments?
I was hoping they would, because a person who has the ability to self-interrogate is perfect for a place where you lose your memories.
Right.
It's like, what did I think earlier? Oh, this, cool, like perfect.
Yep.
So of course she's going to do well there.
Yeah. Make It Unclear says, overall, I love this game, but one nagging missed opportunity disappointed me. From the first time we saw a room labeled private in Saga's Mind Place, I was sure it would open near the end of the game to reveal some truly intense stuff. But the room never opens. Even as Saga begins unpacking all her trauma and self-doubt in the final chapter, the equivalent room in the real-world hotel was a safe room. So having the Mind Place version be the complete opposite would have been so cool narratively. But
Was that the New Game
alas,
Plus
Naked
room?
pictures of David in there.
it's going to be a lot of David pics. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah. You don't need to see that. That's her own private stuff.
Yeah, come on.
She goes there when she's done work.
Pervert community member.
Evie writes in and says, my favorite sequence in the game comes in here, where Saga locked herself inside her own head, spiraling into self-hate, and has to think her way out of it. The angry all-caps notes appended to evidence and otherwise Saga's constant interjections felt so authentic to my own mental health struggles. Likewise, the way we get out of the spiral by applying therapeutic techniques to ground Saga is a powerful payoff. It's rare for games to try to portray inner conflict. To see this one done so believably while revitalizing a mechanic with the case board that was starting to wear a bit thin, it was a complete delight. And Brady G says, seeing Saga escape from the dark mind place by using, you said, Haley, cognitive behavior therapy techniques to combat her insecurities and fears was truly moving. As someone who struggles with insecurity and imposter syndrome, linking the evidence in the room to show why these accusations were untrue made me tear up.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a section I was kind of thinking about what Sarah was talking about with the themes. It was like, okay, these are themes I understand and have seen before, which most themes are. There are only so many themes. You find your family. Revenge is bad. Things of this nature. Mm-hmm. But this one was a real testament to, it's a known theme and it's a known arc, but it's like totally new way of engaging with it that increases your understanding and makes you think about it in kind of a different way, which is like the strength of a good story. And in this one, having the like, when you are spiraling, about Logan's death being your fault, being a bad partner, infinite evidence for these things is forming, is popping into your hand. It could go on forever. Yeah. And that's that's what it feels like. If you go down this path, if you choose to think about things this way, it's you never will stop.
And I like that it's also like a copy of a copy when she's pinning up the Logan picture over and over again. It's getting darker and darker as it's kind of descending and repeating. It's such a cool way to represent that.
That was so really well visualized. It was perfectly visual. It was such a good use of that, where I was kind of on the fence whether I liked it or not. They brought me back home with its use like this at the end. I was like, okay, this is perfect. Like that's exactly how those kind of things. Often with games, it's kind of hard to visualize internal monologues without just saying it out loud. Like, I am Saga and I'm not good enough. And you're like, okay, like that gets kind of old. But the fact that you can hover over the photos and see the thoughts she has as if it's evidence to support her previous claim, like that's so smart, because that's how your brain works. It's like, I'm a bad partner. I left Casey behind. Oh, why did I do that? No good partner would do that. It's like, he needed me and I wanted to go work on myself. Like, he needed me, and I'm like, those thoughts. That's exactly how the brain operates when you're doing that negative thought stuff. And then when she finds the good evidence, it's like, Casey trusts me and I trust him, and we have a really good relationship. And it just goes in front of those. It's better evidence than the other stuff. Like, that was so good.
I think it all is a more second person, like, you failed him. Stuff like that, which is the way that voice appears in our heads, I think, is kind of the outsider voice. And it's so interesting the way you form evidence out of nothing about how bad of a person you are. And then the items you get that are, here's why it's not this way. Here's the note that really moved me was the note from your mom about you working all the time. Right. Where she says, it's important Logan grows up seeing you do what you love. I thought that was really moving. And the way that all of those come from actual physical totems in the room,
right?
That you burn the dark presence away to see, because like that's what's clouding you. It's like the only good things you see are you burn away the dark, and then you can see it, and then when you put it on, you view it totally different.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And
it makes so much sense. It's
almost a payoff of the whole unreliable narrator thing, because it's like we are all unreliable narrators. We all think that the way we think is the truth when it's not. We just get wrapped up in our own narratives.
Yeah, and I like that even later on. I think it's when you're going through like a little subway station area, like those voices come back in, like, you let me down, you pushed me. And then I love that Saga just cuts in, she goes, enough already! It's like immediately nips in the bud, whereas Alan Wake could be like, now what did that mean? These voices won't stop, but maybe if I can write out of it. Kevin K says, the sequence as you're filling out the case board with the dark presence trying to convince you of the story really got under my skin. Putting the picture of Logan up again and again and again while the picture slowly fades into darkness was really effective, and with comments under them like, what makes more sense? Everyone is wrong or you are? I really felt the idea of Saga mentally slipping there. But it's not all rosy. Cozy says, did anyone else think Saga's whole taking control of her story moment fell flat? The sequence in her mind plays felt kind of heavy-handed. It made me think of how dirty all the female characters are done in this game. There you go, Sarah. Cynthia, Barbara, Alice, and Logan all die. Rose is written off as crazy. Kieran Estevez could have been any nondescript FBC agent who we leave at the shore. Even Saga is a literal plot device Alan uses for his purposes of escaping the dark place. Is this an effective commentary on the use of females suffering as narrative devices, or does the game fall victim to the same faults?
Well, isn't there a line that Saga has in her Mind Palace where she's like, I'm so fucking tired of like having to do what like white men tell me to do kind of thing. Like
another white asshole deciding what I get to do.
Yeah, and I really felt that, but I do feel like the men in this game, maybe not so much Alex Casey, but it's like they're definitely not handling things well. And then like the women do like Cynthia, like last episode, Haley was telling us all about Cynthia and like her lights and like how she would change the light bulbs, and like they seem to be like solving problems while the men seem to be starting them. Like the women are putting out the fires and the men are starting them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just like a mistake, like they just never, that wasn't intentional, and they're like, oops, all bad men, or what was going on there.
And the argument could be made that it's like an overly idealized version of women, still from a man's perspective, right? Of like, here's what women are like, and here's what I put them on a pedestal for, versus them just being equal to the men.
Yeah, this idea that it's like men's emotions are women's problems seems to come up a lot, because all of Scratch is just the negative emotions of his ego and all this kind of stuff, and it's never his problem. It's Alice's problem. It's like Rose's problem. It's Saga's problem, but it's never his problem. Yeah. So why can't he just stay dead?
That's a good point.
Sis writes in and says, not to sound like a psycho, easy, but I don't care about Logan. Saga's maternal instinct is understandable, but as a player, I have no connection to Logan because I know so little about her beyond her being our virtual daughter. Successful parentification of games requires the child's prolonged presence, physical or otherwise, to build attachment. Her distance/Saga's absence in her life is the point of Saga's guilt, but in order to share that guilt as a player, I need more participation in that distancing. Instead, she just feels like a MacGuffin to drive the plot. Alice does too, though less so.
The absence is what you're feeling, though. Like that is what you're playing through.
And if we saw her and she was in the game running around with us, it would be a lot harder to try to that early thoughts of is she actually dead or not,
That's
which
the problem.
Clearly get resolved later on. It's like has she been dead for years in Watery, or is she at home watching Night Falls? If she was in the game, I think it would be like, well, obviously I just saw her, so easy.
Yeah. I think the game just asks you to have a certain level of empathy for Saga and her situation.
Yep.
Because they spell it out really clearly in the beginning, where she's like, she really cares about Logan, but she also really cares about this job. And you can see like that inner battle in her. So I think you just have to have like a certain level of empathy from the beginning for it.
Yeah, and it's like you're not going to see, you know, a cute little cutscene of Logan be like, I love my mommy. But like the way they want you to connect, and if it didn't work. But is just to see Saga throughout the entire game being so worried about Logan and all those scenes of her grabbing Alan Wake by the shoulders effectively, be like, why did you deal with my daughter? Why did you put her in this story? Like that's, if you're not connecting to that, then I get that it's not landing it for you. But that's why they're trying to get it through.
Totally fair. Just an interesting conversation, because something that I think about with Logan is like the FMV stuff in this game and in Remedy games moving beyond a gimmick. I feel like it serves Logan in an interesting way to have your only experience with her be the real photo of a real little girl rather than ever having her in video game form. Like just hearing her voice and seeing those pictures almost makes her feel more real than she would otherwise. If she had an overly
She's such a
large
cutie.
presence.
Also, Saga's actress, such a cutie. I feel like
Such
we
a
were
cutie.
robbed. Like, we didn't get to see her until the very end, and I was like, oh my god, she looks so much better than her in-game model. Like, what a cutie.
Yeah,
was
why do you
great
think
live
that
action.
is? That was interesting when like it started to seep in, and you see
think
her, I
they
guess,
just
in the dark
didn't-
places the first time, right? Like her by the chair and
Yeah.
stuff.
A lot of the FMV stuff is only dark place. I thought was kind of what they were hinting at, is like when you're in the dark place, it's bending reality to not just like their real life, but also maybe ours a bit. That's why they're FMV.
Interesting.
But then there is FMV stuff when you're walking around. But actually, no, it's only Alan in the dark place the whole time, with Casey over top being real, or
Right,
himself,
with the
or
echoes. Yeah.
or Saga.
There's got to be
Is
examples.
every FMV incident in this game only from Alan's perspective in the dark place, or sometimes in the mind place with Saga,
Saga
which
has
you
the
could,
mind place.
but you could argue that's like another, like in the same way that the dark place is like an AWE vibe, like her ability as a seer is another like periutilitarian energy area that also blends realities.
I mean, she sees the live action commercials.
Oh, interesting. I guess that's
Oh yeah,
That's just,
true.
like, cute.
That kind of shatters
Yeah.
everything I just said.
Yeah. Haley,
Okay,
come
but
on, you're embarrassing.
Before I
Unless,
forget it,
unless
I'll leave.
TV is the dark place, though.
Oh, is that
it is
profound
art.
enough for
it
you,
is the
Sarah?
creativity.
There we
is
go.
art.
Before I forget it, though, what the heck happened to the Bookers? They like introduced them, gave them really important roles, and then dismissed them. I'm assuming they're going to come back, but like I was like, what happened to them?
The mail booker was the guy who ran the play.
Yeah, he did the
Right.
cult play, but that was before he came. Or that was after he went to Bright Falls, because that was like his inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little last time, and as far as I could tell, like the last thing they mentioned was, I think the brother ran back into the woods or something, and then I don't know if the sister went back after him, but yeah, that was just completely left open, and I don't know.
Kind of like Tornado.
But I also don't know if I missed like
Yeah.
some kind of side content,
I don't
like
know.
in one of the wandering around sections that you could have found out more about them or something.
Maybe.
I really enjoyed being Saga in the dark place and her finally reuniting with her dear friend Tim Breaker. I just felt like, oh, like I haven't seen you since the morgue, since you teleported away from there. Like, what the hell is going on? This is a delightful little mini reunion.
Everyone's so casual when they see Tim too. Like it's
Yeah.
never like
Yeah.
a, oh my god, what are you doing here? It's always like, oh Tim,
Right.
what have
right.
you been up to, buddy? And Tim's like, well, I've got this whole theory that I'm working on.
How
yeah.
depressing is it that Tim got sucked there just to give her a note at a specific time?
Right.
I hated the way I said that also, Ben. I saw your face.
I'm not making faces, Haley. I'm not making faces.
I said that. I was like, worst way to say it, but I'll keep going.
Yeah, so let's continue on this Tim line. Beefcake says, I like Tim Breaker. Every time I see him, I get happy. He reminds me of Francis McDormand's character in Fargo, just calmly putting things together.
Similar outfit.
And it's a beautiful day.
I like that it kind of proves that you can exist in the dark place and not fall apart like Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Good
yeah,
point.
like sometimes you're just in the dark place, but you don't have to be a little bitch about it. Interesting.
There's a reason he's there for 13 years, and it's not because the dark place is that bad a place. It's because it's Alan Wake there.
What if a chill dude was in the dark place?
What if like an emotionally regulated man was in the, like if Leo was in the dark place, he would be a Tim
Oh,
Breaker.
greatest compliment ever.
you.
In touch
Love
with
that.
his feelings,
Wow.
goes to therapy.
Fred DeNova writes and says, I kept wondering who was humming behind all those locked doors throughout the game, only to realize it was Sheriff Breaker at the end when Saga encounters him again.
Oh, he never saw him the whole time.
Yeah, were you ever able to get into those other rooms before? I only interacted with him once with Alan towards the beginning of the game and kept wondering where he was.
All of them, right?
I guess so.
I don't know if I got the one outside the theater on the roof. I heard the hums, but I don't think I ever got
That
it.
one was
There's like a little hidey hole you have to crawl under
Yeah.
that's super out of the way.
Yeah, that one was one you could miss.
I would have missed that if someone in chat wasn't like, the hole's right there. I was like, okay, thanks. Otherwise, I would have missed it too.
The phone call that Saga gets, I was very...
Alice.
That was Alice, okay.
I don't know. I'm guessing. Question mark? Alice?
I mean, I was one of those... I should go back and compare the voice. It maybe is obvious for the obvious fans, but I guess I didn't know Alice's voice that well. But it's interesting that like she picks it up and she goes, it's me again. Go to the statue. And so it's weird to open with "it's me again" when it's the first time they've ever talked.
And then the next time they talk, she introduces herself.
Is that right?
Yeah,
So
I think so.
I don't get it. Is it like
It's
a loop?
the spiral.
Oh, it's a
'cause
spiral.
Yeah,
The
you're thinking
statue
of it in
also
loop
changes.
terms.
Yeah, I think of a loop. Yeah, we moved on from loop to spiral.
We did?
Right.
So now the timeline doesn't matter anymore, and it's just all made up.
Well, everything's made up. Snake wrote into Patreon to say it's a spiral. That is helpful.
Wow.
Whoa.
I hadn't thought of
Is
that.
it a loop also, or?
I don't...
Send a follow-up on that, please.
Yeah, we'll get back to it in the next episode, I think.
Isn't a spiral just a series of connected loops?
It is.
Oh.
Hey,
Hey, everybody,
so,
welcome to the deepest dive.
But yeah, the whole live action ending then coming in, shooting Alan mid monologue. Is it truly all over? Is it over, Anderson? Says Alex Casey. Jeffem, emotions when credits started rolling. What were you thinking, man?
I was just happy that Saga
You can
shot
say it.
Alan Wake.
Oh, interesting.
Cathartic.
That was
You
the high
hate
point for
Alan
me.
Wake more than any villain
I
in gaming
really-
history. What is
he's
going
just-
on with you?
I don't know. Maybe
Hey, I
because
know
he
what it is.
caused all this shit for like 2 decades, and everyone is just suffering because he can't figure out. He has to write the perfect story that he's totally incapable of writing, and we just all have to suffer through it. It's one of those things, honestly. Like, on a serious note, it's one of those things where we were talking about like objectives in games where it's like, okay, you've gotten to the door, go through that door. Oh, actually, you have to go do these 5 other things before you can get through the door, like the detour stuff.
Yeah.
Like this whole game is one big detour caused by Alan Wake, and that's what starts to rub me, and just his personality and being so self-absorbed with himself, which I think is all, to be clear, like it's all really cool stuff, and it is cool to explore it as like as a character study. This game is fascinating, and he is a fascinating character. He's just a repugnant character that I do not like as a human being, and kind of resent that we have to go through all of this because he can't figure his own crap out.
Pardon me if this is too personal of a question, but are you not also a writer who hasn't been writing? Is there anything there for you?
I hate myself. Is Kurt Baboon says Jeff is talking about Dan Reichert too.
Let me rephrase
Is
that. Don't
Dan
you
Reichert
suck?
the version of myself that I don't like?
He's Mr.
Is that-
Scratch. Yeah, it's pretty clear.
I do when I think about when I try and puzzle together, because there are a lot of loose ends, and I feel like we're answering a lot of questions that maybe aren't actually answered as neatly as the solutions that we come up with it. When I think about the story, like the overarching story, I like to think of it as there actually isn't a dark presence at all. It's just this place, this location or whatever has this overlap that allows writers to write things into reality. And the whole dark presence thing is just a construct of Alan Wake's mind. Like, that's what he wrote, and that's what he's blaming everything on. But there actually is no dark presence. It's just screwed up artists come to this place, and they kind of create this screwed up reality. And that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dark presence is actually within all of us. And then wouldn't it make sense that like the typewriter's an object of power?
Nope. And I oop.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, because they say like, it's interesting. I was confused about the FBC still being like, we think the clicker might be an object of power. I'm like, might be. Like, why are they hemming and hawing? Like, yeah, it seems pretty clear, right? Keenardo says, as an artist who has struggled with staying out of their own dark place, I did not expect this game to, and the ending of it.
I just want people to know that non-artists also have dark places too. Like, let's not reserve feelings of resentment for artists.
No. But
like,
I think.
What the hell?
But don't you think we're all artists, and that's why we all have dark places?
Anyone can be an artist.
Everyone is an artist.
Everyone's an artist of their own life.
Who here? Does anyone in this call consider themselves an artist?
I do.
You do?
Sure.
I consider Leo an artist as well.
I consider Leo an artist, yeah.
Thank you.
I painted some dogs and kitties to make money for a while.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Yeah. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Keenardo says, as an artist who has struggled with staying out of their own dark place, I did not expect this game to end so powerfully for me. Saga's technique for escaping really moved me, and I think that it's not a loop, it's a spiral, maybe the same kind of useful concept for Alan, as it represents that he's not stuck forever, and that ascending the spiral instead of descending it may be the framework he needs to escape. While I was initially disappointed at the lack of a resolution, I'm ultimately more excited that we're likely getting more Alan Wake, especially if this is the direction that we're all headed. Yeah, I was personally surprised at how quickly it wrapped up. I think in my mind, I was like, well, it's going to be 10 chapters each. So then when it was like right towards the end and then credits started rolling, it was really a shocking moment. Like, oh, okay, like I'm cool with ambiguity. I just thought we still had a couple hours to go in wrapping this entire saga up, no pun intended. Let's see. Chris Hewson says, I want to like the ending, but too much is left unresolved. The game kept repeating what we could safely assume, like how Alan was Scratch and Saga was a character that just felt tired. Rather than feeling cheeky, meta lines in Deerfest like Remedy mocking us by predicting how we'd react to the story they railroaded us on. The same goes for It's Not a Loop, It's a Spiral. Ambiguity's fine, but Remedy insinuates a concrete ending in Alice's video. Are she and Logan really dead? Does it matter? With just how much is left open to interpretation, I'm not sure the game has earned its loose ends. Jacob,
I agree with that take. I feel similarly.
Yeah. Jacob,
I think it's the weaknesses it has are because it's like really confident they're getting another one, and if they don't, that would be a big bummer because of that. Rather than like, we finally get the chance to make another Alan Wake. Let's make it everything this Alan Wake sequel could possibly be.
Yeah.
It's like still just a step.
Yeah. Jacob Schumer says, I was initially unsatisfied by the ending, but it grew more on me as I kept thinking about it. How the entire game was showing Alan's loops and spirals ending with him shot in the head in the writer's room, and it concludes with a final loop with the shot being light instead of dark. With the dark place as an analogy for writer's block, it's fitting that the path to get out is to cede partial narrative control to a co-author and have her deliver a violent shot of inspiration via the bullet of light. That said, Alan Wake 3 definitely can't just be more dark place from Alan. I think we're all in agreement on that.
I think it will be.
I can't imagine.
I think it will be too.
I think
No, but it's going to be like Alice's journey, right? Like,
it'll be Alice trying to leave little notes of "I love you" to Alan and "Don't give up, buddy," and it'll just be Alan being like, "Why does this keep happening to me? It's not my fault."
But I'm making progress. Spencer S. says, I wonder what the point of the cliffhanger with Saga is. It's a nice cut rhythm-wise, but I'm not seeing any thematic reason for the ambiguity. The plan either worked or it didn't. If Logan picked up the phone and said, Mom, right before the cut, I feel like that would have strengthened the ending, not weakened it. The best kind of ambiguity leaves the audience with interesting questions rather than just chopping off a chunk of information. I found the ending generally underwhelming, but enjoyed the game a ton overall and look forward to the expansions. Extra Deepest Dive episode? We'll see how we're feeling. We'll see what the schedule's like when the DLC drops, but
And New Game Plus is going to have new story stuff.
Sean Gill says, do you all think it's intentional that with the ending we got in this game, where we're back at the beginning of the game, that it's made to set up a New Game Plus to finish more of the story? If that's the case, that's pretty forward thinking of Remedy to include New Game Plus as part of the loop. Thanks everybody for the best discussion about Alan Wake 2 on the internet. It's not a loop, it's a spiral. Oh, I see. I get it now.
I'd be surprised if they really expect people to play through it again. Like if there's anything that crucial versus just like, we have to do some funny Easter eggs because the whole theme of this game is that it's Sarah, it's not a loop, it is a spiral.
It's a spiral, I see.
Right. But yeah, on the phone call specifically, the phone ringing and getting cut off, like, I don't mind that as not learning that, and I get why people are upset about it and don't like it. That's totally fine. But specifically, the call getting cut off was like, hit me wrong just because it felt derivative. It was like, this is the Inception ending.
Sure.
This is nothing different, really, besides the context that, again, I'm appreciating more further from it, thinking about it more, versus in the moment, it didn't satisfy me for that reason.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think in the moment for me too, I was like, oh no. And then the after credit scene kind of brought me back and was like, okay, I'm satisfied again. Like if it had ended there with no little last line from Alan, they gave us info about how to get Saga's kid back if she is still like dead, instead of confirming whether or not she's dead, if that makes sense. It's like, even if she didn't answer and David was like, she's dead, stop calling me, like at least we have a plan now to ascend and get Logan back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is true. And I did really like the final line, because it's a spiral, not a loop. But it also then reinforced that, like, how many characters got killed but didn't actually die in this game, and that just feels like another result of, like, there's no progress and nothing matters. It brought me back to the beginning. Like, I was not invested in the beginning of the story, because the entire time it's like, well, Alan Wake can just change everything with reality. Like, he just has to sit down at his typewriter and write a different story, and then everything will be fine. And they got away from that a little bit when Alan Wake started to become Scratch or whatever, and he disappeared. And it's like, okay, now our Deus Ex Machina is gone, so now there is a little bit of weight here. But then it's like, at the end, okay, we're right back. Alan just has to figure out how to write a story again, and anything that's broken, we can ultimately just fix by writing a story, if Alan Wake can figure out how to write a story. And that's not super satisfying to me, I guess.
Like, it makes sense thematically for sure, but doesn't make it satisfying for sure.
Fabian writes in, they said, there seems to be an interesting contradiction about what part of Saga's story is reality. If I understood correctly, the para-utilitarian's memories are not changed by the AWE. So Saga remembers Logan back home with David, but Tor and Odin, who are also para-utilitarians, remember Saga and Logan living in Bright Falls.
She's part Door too, though. Like, her dad is Warland Door, so I kind of assume she has like powers from him and also the Anderson powers.
Are we taking
like the
fact?
I'm taking that. I don't know if it's. I mean, it's like insanely heavily implied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the point
But
that
also,
I'm like, yeah, it's confirmed.
But also, don't Tor and Odin tell her, hey, like, this is just a story, you're above it, your daughter didn't die?
Yeah, but then they do remember her living in Bright Falls, right? In the trailer, or is Fabian mistaken? I'm trying to remember if they specifically reference that.
No, they do. They are like, we haven't seen you in years.
Right.
And she doesn't remember meeting them.
But I thought it was just when she was a little kid and she left.
Oh, yeah, that would...
That's probably what it is. So I think Fabian might be mistaken here.
Because then there's that picture of them in the old folks' home when she's little, standing with them all.
Right. Somebody wrote in, I'm sorry, I don't think I have it included here, but they're talking about that idea of when Dora's like, Alan, you're hurting somebody who's very important to me and very close to me. And that's like the main piece of evidence that he's her dad. Somebody's saying like, oh, maybe he means Jesse.
Why?
Why not? Somebody wrote in about that. Like, there's an option.
I'm glad we're at this part of the discussion now.
Yeah.
Why not?
Maybe his connection to the FBC, and that's what they were going for, I guess, with the overall door stuff. But
it would make sense for her to have his powers because, so far she hasn't been affected by the story. So
right.
That's why she's been able to just be like, what are you guys talking about? Instead of like, yeah, I live here my whole life. I'm part of the story.
Right.
Like that. That's like the only way that would make sense then.
Sure.
Because Tor and Odin have been to the dark presence. That's why they can remember it in the same way Rose can. So that's why Rose also can do things outside of it. But I think for Saga, the only way she could be outside of it too is if she has the extra power somehow, which would be Door.
Drake H says, the hero's journey is made up of 3 parts: departure, initiation, and return. Because of this, I thought we might see the end of Alan's journey in this game, but it wasn't until I beat the game that I realized that Alan Wake 2 was only initiation. Let's look at the plot of Initiation. Alan fills the role of detective and discovers that Scratch has written a third manuscript, Return. So Return is not its own book, but actually a plot device of Initiation, a book within a book. It was not until Alan and Saga write a conclusion to Return that Initiation is also able to conclude. This is further supported by the fact that Initiation in a literary sense involves the death and rebirth of the main character due to major revelation, which happens at the end of the game when Alan discovers it's not a loop but a spiral. All of this is to say that Alan is finally ready to write his true return and ascend the spiral in the next story.
It's going to be called Ascend, right? Like it has to. The last book.
Do you think they wouldn't just call it Return and be like, this is the true return?
No, because I think I agree with what they're saying there is like Return wasn't a book. It was just a thing referenced in a book. Right. So now the final true thing in the most meta way possible will be Ascend to go past what should have been the third Return, but we stopped it. So now here's Ascend and we're getting out.
I like it.
That's a phenomenal comment. I really like it. And it makes me think about, Return, the third book being, kind of beneath and within 2. Mm-hmm. Almost like a kind of, sorry, I'm going to say it, spiral. It really, like, unironically, being within it in that way is really, really cool tie-in.
Yeah.
And they also call the dark place a place where there's many pages stacked or many things stacked on top of each other. And that's a book.
Yes,
that is a book.
Books are
I like the 3-second pause where I was like, "Oh crap, that's
no. Trust me, our brains are bleeding out our ears." Joe Chefkinski writes in and says, "I think my favorite baseless speculation that I've come across is that Saga and Alex are still trapped at the end, and that Max Payne 1 and 2 are Casey's experiences in the dark place." Honestly, all the Norse mythology references in Max Payne make more sense this way.
Remember in Max Payne when you're walking around in the dark, scary room, walking on a thin little line of blood to your wife and child crying?
No.
Remember that? Scary dreams in Max Payne?
So that's dark place stuff?
Dark place much?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Let's see. Sarah,
Chat's pogging for me. Chat's pogging for me.
Do you chat? Come on, you guys. All right, Andrew Walker writes in and says, I thought this would be mentioned in part 2 as the last chance to find all collectibles. As the last chance to find all the collectibles is before the point of no return. I don't often try to 100% a game, but I had to see what Remedy might be hiding. Whilst there is no specific reward for all lunchboxes, for all stashes, you are given the watery lighthouse key. Inside, you find an inventory expansion and lore about the brothers, turning the lighthouse into a weapon. The final nursery rhyme uses audio instead of a written puzzle and reveals how an FBC agent met a tragic end after experimenting with rhymes to open a path to the dark place.
Oh, so that's like all the nursery rhymes actually have like a ending to them. That's cool.
That is awesome. Thanks for writing it with that, Andrew.
Oh, that's awesome.
Spencer Botine says, I found it a tad bit frustrating that Saga doesn't acquire all the tools needed to fully explore her areas in the game almost until right up to the point of no return. I did backtrack a bit to use the bolt cutters and explore new areas, but it felt so unnecessary to gather materials for the endgame that just sat in the shoebox. This is something that Resident Evil does better. Backtracking for resources almost feels like a necessity, and the ability to do so is unlocked steadily throughout the entirety of the game.
Backtracking or looping?
Great question. This game loops, whereas Resident Evil spirals.
I was glad to not backtrack just because of like the inertia, the momentum through the ending. I was like, I'm glad I don't feel the need to escape this.
Yeah.
Kevin W. wrote in over on Patreon saying, why is the shoebox space so limited when they overwhelm you with charms, which can't be discarded, and extra items from the cult stashes and nursery rhymes? What's worse is I found an issue where the charm given for petting Meier Setter could not be placed in my completely full inventory, and I had no way of getting it back. It baffles me that such basic design mistakes have been made in a game with such a high level of craft in other areas, making the shoebox size basically infinite, as in Resident Evil, seems like a no-brainer, and I hope they remedy this problem for the sequel.
Ooh.
That would make sense narratively, too, because the shoebox is where the clicker gets given to Alan in the first one. So it's almost kind of like a weird object of power thing that housed the clicker the whole time. So it should have weird powers where it's infinite space in there.
Yeah.
Instagram expert, I'm wondering how this game connects to Control. there you go. For example, is the Ocean View Hotel just a reference, or is it the actual same hotel, Haley? And what about the spiral symbol on the doors in Alan's apartment in the nursery home? I still have so many questions.
What's a motel?
Holiday Inn?
In Control.
The spiral iconography, I was really like, that's why the ending really got me, is because the whole time they're shoving spirals at us, but I thought it was just to reference Control. So I was like, haha, Control, and I didn't think about it too deeply. And at the end, when it actually was like the whole plot point, like that's like what we were supposed to be learning the whole time, and they were shoving it in my face consistently for 20 hours, and I was like, haha, I get it. And it's like I didn't get it at all. I was like, oh my god, it made me feel so like crazy, stupid, but in a fun way. Like, of course it is the most simple thing imaginable that they were like, here it is. And I was like, anyways, and I kept overthinking other things to the point that I was like, what could possibly be the solution? It was just the thing they showed me the whole time. And like behind Thomas Zane, whenever you see him, there's spirals behind him like all the time too. I was like going back through like cutscenes. There's spirals everywhere. Like one of the scenes, like the haunted scene, is just like, I was saying last episode, all it does is add spirals to the ground. Stupid. They were like shoving it at me, and I was just like, I don't care. It like moved on from it. And it made me feel crazy that I was like, of course, that's such a succinct and easy way to be like, how can you stop a loop from going on forever? It's like, just call it a spiral. And then you're like, oh my God, of course, it's so simple. But like, you don't think of it when you have this convoluted piece of media that's asking you 20,000 other questions. If you just calm down and think of the main thing, you could figure it out, but I didn't.
It really does change things, that context, because it's like, a spiral implies that the events have consequences versus like a trauma loop of doing the same thing over and over again that you think they're kind of painting things as. It's like, no, things you are doing are causing you to be this way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there was one part too I wanted to bring up too, that they talk about echo chambers near the end here, which I thought was such an awesome word to use, because it had me thinking, Leo, last time when we were talking about like echoes, how this game seems to be focusing on how echo, like the concept of an echo is the thing that like allows information or like thoughts to like reverberate through these two realities or whatever. And then when they talk about echo chambers, I like was like, oh, that's such a perfect like thing to think about, because when you have an echo that's confined, then it loops in an echo chamber. So it's like a loop that echoes consistently over and over is an echo chamber. And then that also like is what's happening to Saga when she starts to loop instead of spiral, but then she like breaks out of the echo chamber to spiral and ascend and leave. And I just think like all that underlying like concepts and like thematic considerations are so well thought out and like implemented. Or I'm reading into this like a nerd, like an English nerd, and I didn't even think about that. And
there are totally moments of surprising like consistency for sure. Yeah. It's fun to make it. Makes it fun to read through. And if you're just listening to the podcast version of this, Haley just went Super Saiyan, just in case anyone was curious at home. Let's see.
Like Naruto. Naruto hands.
Beaten Down Brian writes in and says, while I'm lukewarm on the game as a whole, I do think this is one of the better, more interesting uses of dual protagonists I've seen in a game. Having Saga's perspective be the same as that of new players while using Alan's sections to go off the rails felt a clever way of easing people into it. Giving the freedom to swap characters also made it so everyone's playthrough was just a little different in terms of when information was being revealed to you, which was cool. Also, I enjoyed the second musical section way more. Does this appease you, Leo? Please don't hurt me, says Beaten Down Brian.
Too little, too late.
Ouch.
Lock your doors, Brian.
See you at the playground 3 p.m.
H. Densmore writes and says, I love how often Alan is shown to be wrong. When he says, there are only victims and monsters, is only true by his worldview. He needs Saga to help imagine something different. Without her, he condemns those around him to either victim or monster status, just as he's drawn a false dichotomy between himself and Scratch. His loops are actually spirals. Loops lack resolution. A spiral echoes and returns while moving to an endpoint. This reflects healing practices related to grief and trauma, where you recount or put traumatic events into writing, revisiting several times, each time digging deeper emotionally.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I feel annoying talking about it for 2 full hours as we have, but like I really do like it. I really think there's a lot of significance to it. I think it's a cool thing.
I think it's a cool thing.
I do stand by it.
Alexandra Muntien says, can we please give some love for both Matthew Porretta and Ika Vili for their performances as Alan Wake. They were fantastic. Peretta's tortured rambling and Vili's manic movement, specifically in those live-action videos, really added a layer to Wake's torment. It's especially impressive given the acting in horror is often severely underappreciated, if not overlooked entirely. The last time I enjoyed a performance this much was Dr. Darling in Control. Remedy is onto something with this Matthew Peretta guy.
Sam Lake also did really good acting in that
I agree.
short film.
Yep.
That was great.
Nailed it. He didn't smirk once. By the way, Leo, I watched that thing you referenced last time of Jack Nicholson in The Shining constantly looking at the camera. That's that little video. Do you believe that was a direction, or do you think it's just, could you do that for any movie with that many close-ups of like, if you really slow it down, you can see the eyeballs catch?
I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a direction versus something fun Jack Nicholson was sneaking in there, but I don't think they look at the camera that much in other movies.
You don't think so?
I think people notice that and they redo it.
Yeah, and I feel like the editors would have noticed that and not left it in.
Maybe.
I'd use those takes, yeah.
As long as no one looks at the camera in this deepest dive, we should be just fine. We don't have to do it again. Michael Lane writes in and says, it took me many hours to realize that I kept getting the same song at the end of Alan's chapters, specifically the song This Road. Some say that it loops forever. At first I thought it was a glitch.
But that doesn't mean it's true.
That's right. At first I thought it was a glitch, but eventually I pieced together the song's themes and direct allusions to loops and Alan's own loops stuck in the dark place. Of course, Remedy's decision to use just this one song built wonderfully to the final chapter for Alan, where we're treated to an extended cut of the song with additional verses and expanded instrumentals.
Yeah, before the last one, it starts getting remixed a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know how different the different versions are, but yeah, it starts getting chopped and screwed like 3 from the end, I think.
Right on. Let's see. Doug Cockle. Oh, I'm sorry. This is not Doug Cockle. This is H. Blessing. They were in saying, I was pondering the ending shortly after the credits, only to be snapped out of it when I noticed the name of Nightingale's actor, which is Doug Cockle. Remedy, you've done it again, they say. And then somebody replied to that comment and said, Doug Cockle is apparently the voice of Geralt as well in Witcher.
Oh.
So he was Nightingale, apparently.
What?
He loves being nude.
He loves being in a tub. Absolutely. I want fan art of Nightingale in Cauldron Lake in that tub pose from Geralt. Lewis K writes in and says, only just caught up in time for the last section of the deepest dive, but I noticed during the middle chunk that the combat barks the enemies have are direct quotes from the manuscripts you find as saga that Alan recites when you go into the writer's room. Very cool. Also, I know there wasn't Bluetooth or CarPlay in that old banger saga, but talking on the phone while driving, tisk tisk. Yeah, come on, Saga. It's not responsible.
None of us do that.
Also, Nightless Night is on Letterboxd, which is another classic case of Remedy with their meta twists.
Oh, I'm rating it.
Done it again.
So that's a weird idea. Can you read some reviews for that, Leo, on Letterboxd? I'm curious what other people are saying about the film, if they're treating it as like a genuine short horror film.
Wow. The predominant rating is 5 stars. That's what I'll say.
I'll be damned.
Oh yeah, glad I caught this at Poet Cinema for its limited rerun. Classic. Anyone know what happened to the Zane guy? I found the shoebox. Dash. That's the end of it.
Love that.
Perfect. Casper Hajorth writes in and says, the one thing that consistently scared me most was bursting through doors. You just jog around at a pretty slow pace, but once you get to a door, you smash through it. It's the scariest jump scare in the game.
Oh my god, I did that in the police precinct, and they're all having a meeting, and I was walking to the door, but happened to run the last half step, so they were all having a very serious discussion. I was like, "Bro," and they just like all turned and looked at me, and I just turned around and walked away.
Let's see. Chris F says, I was expecting to actually see Barry by the end of the game, and was sad that he wasn't there.
Yes, I was so mad that Barry didn't show up. Do you think it's because Barry's voice actor also looks nothing like him, and so they couldn't, or like the guy who looks like Barry in real life, and they didn't want to worry about like there's going to be no real life Barry moments in this game at all. That's the only thing I could think of, because Barry's such a good character in the first game.
Yeah.
That you feel him missing in this game for sure.
Well,
I could have sworn the one like slightly negative thing you hear in the return ending thing, the Happy Deer Fest, is somebody's like, justice for Barry.
Oh, really?
Wish I wrote down the exact thing, but someone is wondering where Barry is, yeah.
Oh, weird.
Aw.
I wonder if they do more Alice stuff in the future. It seems like her bond with Barry is in a way where he's going to be the man on the radio or something like that, you know?
Yeah, good call.
Let's see. Tom Rickard writes in, this is definitely my game of the year, and I have dozens of questions regarding the ending, but the thing that has stuck with me since I finished the game is that it's not a loop, it's a spiral. No. Since I finished the game is the section right before Saga's point of no return, where you can explore the town at nighttime. I have family who live in the mountains of Northern California, and Remedy nailed the feeling of a small mountain town at night during a rainstorm. The yellow-orange haze from the streetlights reflecting off the puddles in the street, the occasional person walking on the sidewalk, the hum of the diner's neon signs, the rain rolling in the wind. I kept a save during this part just so I could wander around after I finished the game. I've had many late-night drives, leaving my parents' house in the mountains, passing through small towns just like this. It's a lonely, strange feeling, and it perfectly nailed the feeling in this small section.
That's great. I made a note of that section too, just the color palette, the golden brownness of it. I was like, I've never seen something quite like this.
Yeah.
It's such a unique energy to capture.
For sure. Let's see. Amos Dragon says, granted, I haven't played much past chapter 7 for Saga, but as soon as I got there, I immediately wondered why Remedy decided to make this section so much darker / foggier. There's other nighttime scenarios in the game that never felt this dark. I wondered why and eventually came to the conclusion that it's the combination of the time of day with heavy fog. You really can't see far even with the flashlight on. It does make general navigation and collectibles hunting a huge pain. It succeeds in creating a different vibe, but one that's hard to navigate and enjoy at times.
Some of the earlier sections, I was wondering what time of day it was supposed to be, because it seemed like as you moved from different parts of the forest, it like became night. And that was something that was kind of cool and creepy to me. There's no strict point in time that I'm at.
Right.
The day.
Adam Moran says, hey gang, as a fellow curly-haired person, I was struck by how great Saga's hairdo looks. Seems like games are finally nailing the details of different hair textures. Makes me wonder how much of that is the tech behind hair physics and texture progressing versus more games having people of color in prominent roles. What do y'all think? Noticing a similar degree of quality in games with robust character creators like Baldur's Gate 3, Hogwarts Legacy, and Diablo 4. For good hair.
I definitely think the demand for it is there. Like, I think we're starting to notice the lack of representation in games and just how poorly people are kind of like left to the sidelines because they don't have like white person hair essentially.
Sure.
And I think because we're like demanding more of it and we're starting to notice it, they are making the technology for it.
Yeah.
So I don't let's not pretend they didn't have the tech to do it in ye olden days. Like they could only make like straight blonde hair. Like let's not pretend that was the reason. It's because we're starting to notice it, because we're starting to demand.
They can make Cloud Strife's hair, but not.
Yeah, but they can't
curls.
make curls.
And as Snako in the Twitch chat says, it's definitely more people of color in prominent roles too. Like developers having no choice than to make their main character's hair good.
And they had to nail her hair because it just consists of a lot of little spirals, so it kind of fits the narrative that they
my
get.
God!
It's not loop hair.
Hank writes in, they say, I originally completed the game before doing any of the doll side quests because they weren't tutorialized at all for me. I kept thinking, well, they must walk me through one eventually, and it never happened. After going back to the point of no return save and doing all the side stuff, I still ended up with some cases uncompleted and 2 trailer park keys, yet no lighthouse key. I thought the game was managing to maintain a good pace with the self-directed sections, but it seems my progression was just bugged somehow. I mean, we haven't talked too much about it, but there certainly were a lot of people talking about bugs. You know, Devin M says, I'm really thankful for the community picking this for the deepest dive. I encountered what was a game-breaking bug here when, after catching up to Saga's story as Alan, you couldn't finish the come up with a plan prompt. A patch to get past this was released on Friday, allowing for the game to be finished. If it weren't for the deepest dive, I'm sure I would have been stuck on this since launch day instead of only for a few days, says Devin. Rich McLaughlin says, I was really disappointed to lose my equipment choice because I played efficiently and conserved heavy firepower, expecting a large boss battle at the end, but it never happened. It felt inconsistent with the flow of the rest of the game to me. P.S. I apologize to Sarah for my snark last week. Alan Wake 2 peaked early harder than a high school quarterback, they say.
Oh my.
I'll be damned. Brian Stanley says, by the end of the game, I got exceptional at sniffing out which shadows were real enemies and which were fakes. I felt like a detective as I shined my flashlight at encroaching apparitions. When they stick around a moment too long or take an extra step in any direction, or in my direction, the hostility is palpable, and I use a chunk of battery. The first game's flashlight battery slowly drained when shown brightly and recharged over time. I think this change is to service the shadow gameplay, so the player is forced to use more resources to confirm if the shadow is real or not.
You could also kind of just like point the flashlight at them, and if they swirled, then they weren't real. And then if they kind of didn't do that after a few seconds, you knew you knew that they were real, and then you can flash them, and then they shoot them.
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't learn in hours early.
That. Yeah, that I was really glad to learn that and save a lot of batteries, because I really enjoyed that little part of the game of not being sure quite who's an actual threat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Paul C., here's a biggie, says, I noticed that Sam Lake and Kyle Rowley were listed as co-directors. I listened to an interview Sam and Kyle did together, and they talked about their experience co-directing Alan Wake 2. Sam took the lead on writing, while Kyle focused on gameplay. They both said it was a positive experience. Made me think about Psych Odyssey, where Double Fine tried a similar approach with Tim and Zach, and it didn't work out that well. Double Fine and Remedy have so many similarities. I wonder why it worked out for Alan Wake 2, but not for Psychonauts 2. P.S. A documentary about the making of Alan Wake 2 would be epic. Well, we all agree. Awesome. We all agree we'd love to see it.
I guess Finnish healthcare is my guess.
Finnish healthcare is the answer. Also, if you watch Psych Odyssey, Zach has a certain personality, and mixed with the Double Fine studio, that is fascinating to watch. Psych Odyssey, everybody. Run, don't walk, to YouTube. It's free. Chris L. says, I love this game. One of the best of the year for me. However, after Control, I'm wondering if anyone felt that going back to Alan Wake and focusing on just one AWE was almost a little limiting. I did enjoy the way the FBC was integrated into this game and some small hints as to what's going on back at the oldest house, but unfortunately, we didn't even get a full resolution to this game, so we still have DLC to play, and I'm ready to... Full resolution to this game, so we still have DLC to play, but I'm ready to move on and go back to Control. How are you feeling, Haley, about those two side to side? Do you feel like it's limiting to focus this much on one AWE?
I mean, if it's this intense a one, yeah, like this clearly is like no AWE before, because even when you're reading all the notes of other AWEs, they're almost kind of like cute. Like the vending machine one, or the train one's not very cute because 62 people died. But it's more like isolated events that happen that they
one
contain.
weird day.
One weird day, and then they write it away, and they're like, and that lady's just old, haha, take the vending machine away, and no one talks about it again. Where clearly this one is like even Estevez is like, I need backup, this is crazy. Like, right. Like they're acknowledging that this is different, which makes sense why it's the one that gets its own side game and is the main focus and stuff like that.
I think it's a cool
I totally
split.
get why you prefer one to the other, but I think they complement each other really well. I think it's really fun to drill down on one after having this game that gives context to so many.
Yeah, it's like the narrative equivalent of like the strategy versus tactics world in an XCOM game or something. Like, it's fun to manage the big picture stuff, but then it's fun to zoom in and just be like, yeah, but what's it actually like dealing with this, like when it's in your face,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Garrett Hullfish says, what is the likelihood that the protagonists from both Alan Wake and Control will ever interact with each other? Or that we'd ever play both of them within the same game?
I feel like Jesse should have been here for this AWE. Like, there was time to call the director in. I mean, I get why they did it. They need to do it later. But Estevez was like, we'll get all we could get to help you. And it was like one chopper, 10 boxes, and just her. And it's like, this is not... I've been in the oldest house. There's so many of you. There's like...
Bring the cool gun!
The director has a gun that has infinite bullets, and also she can fly. Like, I think we need some more help.
Yeah.
How much Jesse was in this game? Or
just
rather,
TV,
how much was
right?
Jesse in this game?
Yeah.
Like half a millisecond?
Yeah. I guess just that shot on the TV. And then
I saw her in the credits, and I wondered if I missed anything with her.
Oh.
She's like the last name in the credits, I think.
Was she the last name? That's fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's like a cutscene that I actually missed because I was reading chat, and then chat got mad at me. But like, she flashes on a TV very quick, so I watched it on a YouTube thing elsewhere to be like, oh, yep, that's her. And Dr. Darling also was in that clip very quickly.
And the references, to the red-haired lady and stuff like that. But I mean, there's no universe where she's not going to interact with these Alan Wake characters directly at some point in the future. Like, that's guaranteed to happen. That's the thrill,
Mm-hmm.
But in the same game, I don't know. Like, jumping back and forth, Spider-Man 2 style between Jesse, I don't know. Like Jesse and Saga jumping back, I don't know.
Yeah. The AWE DLC like enemy, Dr. Hartman, was like a hiss taken. Because, like the hiss is the thing in Control, and then taken's the thing in Alan Wake. So maybe they ramp it up by like, oh no, this AWE has gotten too far, and now it's mixed with the hiss. Oh, and then that's maybe how Jesse and Alan work together, because now it's like a new type of super enemy.
Oh yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all the comments submitted over there on Patreon for the deepest dive. Have we missed anything from anybody here?
I want to know
did we
what Sarah
cover-
thinks of it's a spiral, not a loop.
Well, we all
Yeah.
do, but it's kind of, some things need to be unresolved. It's the spirit of
Yeah, just like the game.
yeah.
We were so close to our 210s discussion. Are we holding back on being very overtly obvious about where we personally
Oh,
put
no,
games
Haley,
such as-
Haley, I would love to know how you're
Okay.
feeling. I mean, if you want to volley it out there, I'd love to hear it.
I don't want Sarah to be mad at me, but
Well,
I
no
think
one
I like
does.
this
You've
more
already
than
said it.
Baldur's
I
Gate
already
3.
know.
I said it on
I was in
stream.
that
I
stream.
apologized.
That's a very
But
fair
I
and
haven't-
reasonable thing, Haley. We respect whichever way you went with that
Ben,
decision.
stop it!
I haven't finished Baldur's Gate 3, so there is a potentiality that I swing back.
Wow.
Who knows? But when I finished this game, I was like, I adore this. This is the best game I played this year. As of right now, Sarah, don't worry.
Okay.
Look,
We
no
all
one,
like different things from our games. You know, I like endings, and you don't, and that's fine.
I didn't expect Haley to hate Baldur's Gate 3 more than Hanson. This is crazy.
yeah, I think for me, yeah, we can talk about the 210s, which is our big game of the year debate on the MinnMax Show podcast. I enjoyed this game a lot. I think almost every chunk of gameplay, I feel like 20% of my essence was like, oh, am I going in the right place? What's going on? And again, I'm very stupid at navigating spaces, and so I felt some of those Kyle Hilliard frustrations
No, you
coming
weren't
through.
alone there though.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
found navigating the areas to be like very frustrating.
Yeah.
There
So
was
So, yeah,
definitely
you're
a
not
moment
alone
where
there.
I was
Okay.
getting mad too.
yeah, and so I respect so much about this game. I love that it exists. I love how strange it is, but just the fact that I was frustrated just in a subtle way for so much of the core gameplay that like it drags it down a little bit for me. It's in my it's in my top 5, I'd have to imagine, for the year at this point. Somewhere in that arena. But Leo, where are you at overall, man?
It's my 2 or 3 for the year, I think. We'll
Okay.
see with a little more distance, because it's tough looking at my top 10 for the year and going, so many of them were so long ago at this point. Hard to be so as objective as I can about that. But I really, really adored it.
Yeah. Jeff, I have no freaking idea what you thought about this game after 9 hours of talking to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it overall, and I'm glad I played it, and I found it interesting. Some of the reasons I found it interesting are things that I didn't like, and that's okay too. Like the fact that it's still interesting when I'm not enjoying it I think is a testament to it to some degree. I think it'll be on my top 10. But it wasn't probably not in the top 5 or
Sure.
anything like that.
Okay,
Maybe.
right
But overall, yeah, it's also like I mean we've touched on it different times, but it's like the progression ended up really not making a big difference. Like the combat, it's like a lot of weird kind of up and down things that ultimately it makes it interesting.
And if you take the up and down and you rotate it from a certain point of view,
Oh yeah, see if you're just looking top down, then it's a loop. But you gotta get into the fourth wall. The third dimension breaks through the fourth wall, and then you see the spiral.
You get it.
Yeah, Sarah, I was delighted when I reached out and asked, like, do you have any interest in playing Alan Wake? And you're like, yeah, actually, I am really curious. I do want to check that out. I was delighted by that, and I'm delighted that you joined us for this journey. I don't want to cast you as the person that detests this game.
No.
Okay, good.
I don't detest it. I think it was a great journey. I'm glad I played it. I'm glad that I finally now understand a little bit about what people mean when they say remedy. I was really impressed with a lot of stuff that they did, and it was a great journey, but I will not be dedicating a single brain cell to this game after this deepest dive.
Okay.
I had a really fun time diving with you guys.
Okay, thank you.
But keep me out of it.
Okay.
Keep me out of keep me out of your narratives, you guys.
Sarah's ascending.
Okay, we're going to stay in
descending.
Cauldron Lake. You can go hang out up top, I suppose.
Sarah, I've loved having you on this deepest dive and your perspective, and I hope all the commenters do too. I think all you've said is completely valid. And also, do you think this is going to be on your top 10?
I think just based on like the beautiful environments, the great commercials, like the great TV shows, it's gonna be in the top 10.
Yeah, all right.
Like it's a good journey. They're just bad at writing stories. Like it's not their fault they can't stick everything. You can't stick every landing.
I didn't know you could say that when I was nodding.
I take the nod back.
Chat says, F yes, Sarah was great on this. It was definitely a needed voice.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Hey, we can't thank everybody enough for supporting the Deepest Dive format. Again, we say it every episode, but it's a stupid thing to devote this much time to one game. And so it only can happen because we're an independent media outlet and people can support us over at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Unlock the podcast version of all these discussions and a ton more. Just treat it like a tip jar and then you don't have to interact with it ever again. We're fine with that too. We're not asking too much of thee. But thank you so much, everybody who joined us for this journey. Even if you're just playing along and watching on YouTube, we thank thee. Everybody who is in the Discord channel, throwing out great insight on a second-by-second basis, talking about Alan Wake 2. Shout out to everybody in there. That's it. Thanks so much, everybody. I guess to close things out, Leo, send it off, dude.
This is the ritual to lead you on.
Bye, everyone.
Just once, not chanting it or anything.
Did you know that you can more than double the amount of podcasts from MinnMax every single week by supporting us at the $5 tier on Patreon? You don't have to listen through the browser or anything dumb like that. You'll get access to a private RSS feed if you support us on Patreon. You put it in your favorite podcast app, and then bam, you can listen to our weekly bonus podcast Party Chat, the podcast versions of The Deepest Dives, MinnMax interviews, Max spoilers, and you get the MinnMax Show podcast a day earlier than everybody else. So please help support independent games media. Head over to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's.